Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto tries to navigate life as a Jinchuriki and Clan Heir Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. One more please. The elderly bartender's brows furrowed, but he silently poured his patron another glass. The sound of flowing alcohol echoed in the near-empty bar. Without hesitation, the young man downed the shot glass, ignoring the salt and lime on the dish in front of him. He slammed the cup onto the polished wooden counter, flushed cheeks hidden by the dimmed lights. Before he could ask for more, the glass was gently pulled away from him. He frowned, only to be met with a stern look. You've had a bit too much, Dylan. It's fine, Dylan slurred. I'll call an Uber. I don't think your Uber driver will appreciate you ruining his car with your dinner. Instead of responding, Dylan grabbed his cell phone and frantically scrolled through his messages. Only two items caught his interest: Michelle and work. He opened up his conversations with them and slammed the side of his head onto the bar. I don't think I want to be with you anymore, not after that last fight. Let's break up. I'm sorry for informing you out of the blue, but we have decided to let you go due to recent budget cuts. It was an honor serving with you at Fire Station 32. He closed his eyes and leaned back as he put the phone away. As he wobbled off his stool, the bartender tried to pat his shoulders. Dylan shook him off with a glare. I'm not having the best day, Blake. It'd be like that sometimes, Chief. We all have one of those days. Despite his reddened eyes and cheeks, Dylan choked out a laugh. It do be like that. Can't let these days grab us by the balls. Just need to keep on going. After you hit rock bottom, there's no way to go but up, the bartender agreed. Things will get better, so keep your chin up, you hear? Sure thing, boss, sure thing. He quickly paid his tab, leaving a sizable tip, before staggering out of the bar. Get home safely. Dylan turned around and smiled at the man before drifting to his gray, beat-up Corolla. He dug through his pockets for his keys, but when he found them, his hand hovered over them as he stared at his messy reflection in the car window. He stood motionless for a minute before he entered his car and turned on the engine. It's only 6 blocks away, Dylan mumbled as he punched an address into his phone's GPS. And I still don't know the directions back home. His car slowly rolled out of the parking lot and onto the expressway. As he drove, he chugged on the water bottle in his cup holder and focused on his speedometer. He passed a sign stating the local speed limit, 40 miles per hour. He was going 35. That was when he noticed movement on the side of the road. A man standing on the side of the road with a smoking car. He waved his arms as Dylan's car lumbered by. I'm almost home. I shouldn't stop. Another car will pass by soon. Yet, his right foot was already pressing down on the brakes, his car slowing to a halt just in front of the beleaguered man. That's what everyone will probably think when driving by. I should check if he's alright. Dylan tripped out of his car and stumbled over to the man. Before he could say anything, Dylan felt someone behind him and turned, only to see a blunt object slamming into his head. He couldn't even gasp before he collapsed, darkness overtaking him. He gasped and shot up from his futon. The world spun around him as a dull ache flared near his temples. He planted onto the ground with his small, shaky hands to steady himself. An unpleasant sensation tickled his throat, but he forcibly swallowed to prevent anything from spilling. A nightmare? As he closed his eyes to recall his dreams, his mind was bombarded with 22 years' worth of memories. Thoughts, desires, ambitions, and emotions flooded his mind as his dull headache turned into a pounding migraine. His body briefly spasmed, causing him to fall back onto his futon. He stared at the ceiling for a few minutes before whispering to himself. Takashi Kinjo. I'm Takashi Kinjo. Kinjo brought his familiar, yet unfamiliar, hands in front of his face and studied them. After clenching and unclenching them several times, he pinched his cheeks. It stung. I'm 6 years old, and I live in Konoha. Had he heard the word Konoha several hours prior, he would have thought about his house, his family, and the Hokage. Now when he thought about Konoha, all he recalled was what he had seen in various forms of media: Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, the Konoha 9, Ichiraku Ramen, the academy, people he had never seen and places he had never been. He rolled out of his futon and awkwardly walked to the window, his mind guiding his much smaller feet with slow caution. When he reached his destination, he tripped and nearly fell out of his window. Kinjo glanced out of his second-story window and sighed, breathing in the fresh air before turning his downsized head towards a large cliff by the northern parts of Konoha. 4 faces greeted his hesitant eyes, their empty-eyed yet stoic expressions watching over the village hundreds of thousands of people called home, including Kinjo, whose body was now occupied by an interdimensional traveler named Dylan, a traveler who was dead in his home dimension. Kinjo comfortably leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Hello, are you there? Nobody answered his private thoughts, confirming his suspicions. The previous Kinjo wasn't sharing this body with him. Dylan had his memories and body, but nothing else. Still, his mind was processing the merging of two mental states, a distant memory of a small boy watching a large, wild beast rain death and destruction upon Konoha, the land of waves. The Chunin exams. Konoha Crush. Akatsuki. The Fourth Shinobi War. Danger was coming. He scurried to a small desk in the corner of his room, grabbing a pencil and paper to jot down everything he knew about the world of Naruto. Kinjo scribbled a list of major plot points, characters, and minor details that would be useful in the future. He didn't remember everything. There were notable gaps in his memory of the Naruto verse. Even so, his notes filled up the entire paper, front and back. He only realized it was written in English after he had finished. His mind was in disarray, but he understood his situation. Somehow, he was in that world. And in this world, he could either choose to ignore everything and dodge all the calamities while the main characters did their work, or gain power to help benefit those that had unfortunately drawn the short straw. With or without him, the world would burn. It was only a question of whether he would play a role or not. Meta-knowledge was valuable, and maybe there were some benefits to maintaining canon as much as possible. The heroes had won, after all. But to damn hundreds of souls and purposely leave others weak while he leaned back and watched left a bad taste in his mouth. Not only that, but he could help people that weren't seen in canon. Shinobi, for all their destructive vices, were also peacekeepers of their respective regions. And with the recent war and the Ninetales attack, the people in Konoha and the Land of Fire would need more help than ever before. He had never been one to sit on his hands. If he could help, he would help, especially with the knowledge that he had. Damn the canon, Kinjo muttered with a lopsided smile. Full speed ahead. Kinjo's mind shifted back to his family members sleeping in the other rooms on the second floor because, from what he remembered, he had loving parents and 2 younger siblings in this world. He might have taken over the previous Kinjo's body and mind, but his love for them resonated within his chest. He would protect them. It was the least he could do for the former Kinjo. Kinjo wearily opened his eyes and blinked several times to adjust to the bright sunlight coming through the window. He shook his head as he recollected the vivid dream when something stabbed into his hand. He opened his fist to see a piece of paper lodged inside. It was the list. He quickly stuffed it into a small drawer in his desk, his eyes widening at his surroundings. The room was narrow, with barely enough space for a desk, a futon, and a closet. The walls were painted white instead of a familiar light blue. Noticing that his window was still open, he promptly stuck his head out. When he looked outside, he saw a bustling city with a blend of modern and pre-industrial aesthetics. Bright-colored shops opened their doors, and people of varying styles and sizes were moving about on the streets. The smell of fresh bread and hot iron drifted into his room, an unfamiliar aroma that was strangely pleasing. From the corner of his eyes, he saw 2 rapid blurs shoot across the street from rooftop to rooftop. It wasn't a dream. Kinjo's eyes widened as the blurs disappeared as fast as they came. Watching animated shinobi moving on a screen was immensely different from witnessing real-life shinobi firsthand. As his eyes darted towards neighboring rooftops, a loud bang rattled the room as a small girl with light brown hair and bright amber eyes marched into the room. She giddily looked around the room and beamed after finding her brother. Her chubby cheeks lifted by an inch as she spoke. "Brother, Mama said it's time for you to get up and eat." "All right, Mika," he replied, his mind recalling a burst of excitement when he saw her for the first time 4 years ago. "I'll be right there, okay?" "Okay," Mika said cheerfully. "And it's my turn to choose the games today. Are we going to play that card game Menko again?" Kinjo inquired. "Yep." His sister huffed. "You took my favorite card last time, so I'm going to win it back." Mika's attitude brought an immediate smile to Kinjo's face. She reminded him too much of Sarah, his other younger sister. Sure. Now go wash your hands." As the child ambled away, Kinjo stepped away from the window and stumbled over to his closet. While he changed into a plain gray t-shirt and worn jeans, his eyes drifted to a foggy mirror nearby. Once he finished changing, he grabbed the mirror and stared at it intently. He looked strikingly like his sister, light brown hair teetering on the edge of orange, seal brown eyes, and a plain but cute face. It was vastly different from how he looked on Earth. "How am I so relaxed about this?" Kinjo whispered. Perhaps it was because he was at peace with the fact that he had died, and his siblings would take care of his parents. Or maybe it was because he retained the memories and emotions of the previous host. Not to mention, the knowledge of this world's future kept him busy from overthinking his unique situation. Regardless, he was at home in Kinjo's body in Konoha. As shocking as the experience was, the thought of quashing and replacing the innocent mind of a 6-year-old took a back seat as he slowly trekked into the hallway. He entered the bathroom by mistake before finding the dining room, even though there were only 3 doors to choose from. When he finally entered the room his family was in, Kinjo carefully looked around. The dining room was small, made smaller by the kitchen squashed into the corner. It was noticeably bare, with only a family picture decorating the dark blue wooden walls. The members of the Takashi family occupied the worn dining table and rickety chairs. Mika was zealously eating a bowl of rice with some odd food named acorn jelly and miso soup. A few grains of rice were stuck around her mouth, though she continued to eat with reckless abandon. Satoshi, who had noticeably darker brown hair and eyes similar to Mika's, was chewing on some porridge and seaweed in his high chair. Meanwhile, Kinjo's mother was starting her meal after she had finished breakfast for her children. She was a young woman that looked like an older version of Mika. Her face lit up when she saw Kinjo wander into the room. "Good morning, Kin. Did you sleep well?" "I did, Mom," Kinjo responded. And you? She yawned and gently stroked Satoshi, who looked up and gurgled happily. Not very well. Your brother was up all night yesterday. He was crying and raising a ruckus for hours. Kinjo slid into an empty seat at the table and hesitantly helped himself to some fried eggs. You should get some rest after you eat, Mom. I can wash the dishes and watch Mika and Satoshi. You would? The young woman asked with a yawn. Of course. Memories of him taking care of his siblings while both of his parents worked tirelessly filtered through his mind. You're growing up so fast. Taking care of your siblings and now washing the dishes too? His mother patted his head. Thank you, Kin. That will let me nap for an hour before heading to Shoko's. If your father calls for you, make sure to help him. I'm sure Mika can look after Satoshi alone while you're gone. I'm a big girl. Mika boasted as she accidentally launched her rice-filled spoon across the table. You most certainly are a big girl, Kinjo's mother softly laughed, wiping up the mess. The eldest of the Takashi siblings hurriedly ate his food while his mother fussed over his siblings. He looked at the unfamiliar brunette in the family picture for a few seconds before turning to the family's matriarch. Is the shop busy today? I haven't heard a sound from the store since it opened a few hours ago, but a shipment from Suna is coming later today. Your father will need your help unloading it and putting it in the storeroom. Kinjo nodded, his mind elsewhere, as he finished up his breakfast. After he finished, he collected all the dishes from the table and grabbed a small bath stool to stand on. As he walked towards the sink, he noticed a pile of clothes on the narrow kitchen counter. It was what had kept his mother up for the past several days. The sound of running water and his younger sister playing with Takoshi muted his mumbling as he washed the dishes. I was around 4 when the attack happened. It's been 2 years since the attack. That means there are a few things that I can change before the main events start. The Hyuga affair still hasn't happened, nor has the massacre. A dull thud startled him out of his train of thought as his mother placed a bowl into the sink. She ruffled his hair before walking toward her bedroom. I'll be in my room if you need anything. If you get hungry later, I left some rice balls in the fridge. Yes, Mom. While washing the dishes, Mika skipped over to him and grinned. Hurry up, brother. I want to play. Once upon a time, he would have been extremely annoyed at his younger siblings' antics and ignored her. Now, he was almost 2 decades older mentally, and his desire to spoil his siblings surfaced. He smiled at her and pointed toward his younger brother. I want to play with you too, but I have to clean these for Mom. Make sure Satoshi doesn't eat anything off the floor while I finish up. Okay. Mika bounced to Satoshi, who was crawling slowly under the table. She played peekaboo with him, much to Satoshi's and Kinjo's amusement. Kinjo placed the final dish on the drying rack as he sighed. Kids, adorable until they hit middle school, then they turn into little devils. Oh, I'm done, Mika! Instantly, she scrambled to her room and returned with a deck of Menko cards. Faces and names of famous shinobi adorned each card, including Leaf and foreign shinobi. She ran over to him and pulled out a card triumphantly. I'll beat you with this. White, spiky hair. Red markings on his face. A smirk that was both friendly and smug. So that's what Jiraiya looked like in real life. Kinjo wrinkled his nose at the picture. That's really odd. What do you mean, brother? Mika tilted her head quizzically. Jiraiya-sama is still alive. Kinjo blinked rapidly. Right, I mean I forgot that you had his card. Daddy gave me 5 Menko packs yesterday, remember? He was inside the last one. Maybe I should keep your favorite card since you already have a rare card. He quickly returned to his room before his sister could reply, though her jaw dropped in horror. As he grabbed the deck of cards in his desk drawer, his eyes fell on the list. Kinjo gripped the list for a moment before dropping it. Soon, Kinjo returned to the dining room to see his sister sulking with her cards scattered in front of her. Satoshi was babbling and climbing on her back, leaving drool on the back of her shirt. Mika looked away and crossed her arms when she saw her older brother. It was only when he pulled out her prized card did she look at him. A mere Kiri Jonin defeated Sarutobi? Kinjo asked as he shuffled through the deck to find the Kiri shinobi in question. Who the heck is Ganbi? Brother, you need to address Hokage-sama more respectfully. Mika scolded. Also, he would never be defeated by anyone. He's the strongest shinobi in the world, right? I can't just call him by his name. Get ready, cause I'm taking my card back. Mika held her Jiraiya card at the ready, and Kinjo slowly placed the 3rd Hokage card on the floor. After aiming, the 4-year-old child threw her card onto the floor and hit the corner of her target. The 3rd Hokage's face lifted towards Kinjo for a second before falling unflipped. No, Jiraiya-sama! The younger Takashi cried. My turn. After winding up dramatically in front of his sister, Kinjo lightly tapped his card on the floor. Darn, I missed. The exchange went back and forth several times before Mika could finally flip the card and win back her prized possession. She laughed as she hugged her card. I'm sorry Jiraiya-sama wounded you, Hokage-sama. Wounded? It's like you forgot the rules, brother. If 2 shinobi from the same village fight, the winner wounds the loser, and the loser gives the card to the winner. But if shinobi from different villages fight, the loser's shinobi is killed, and the card is trashed. How does that make any sense? Kinjo mused, because ninjas from the same village don't kill each other. Huh, is that right? Now let's play again. Kinjo. Come down for a second. The boy in question looked up from his rice ball and motioned to his sister, take care of Satoshi for me, okay? I'll be right back. Okay. Kinjo exited the dining room and discovered the stairway leading to the ground floor. After a few uneasy steps, he was in the store's back room. It was filled with various crates and boxes, both empty and full. One of the crates was labeled "Do Not Touch" in large, bolded letters. Looking towards the door leading to the shop, Kinjo carefully removed the crate's cover and peeked inside. It was filled with beef jerky. Shaking his head, he delicately opened the door and peeked through it. There, he witnessed his father standing near the front counter, loudly speaking with a dark-haired man who wore a bright yellow yukata. I don't need soldier pills for my store, but they are a staple among shinobi, are they not? Konoha is the biggest shinobi village and, unsurprisingly, employs the largest number of shinobi. Even purchasing a single crate of these pills can net you a tenfold profit. Especially since the war with Kumo is still ongoing. The man in the yukata insisted. Makoto, these soldier pills are from Suna. You're well aware that we make some of the best soldier pills. While his father was not a physically imposing man, the stranger flinched when the store owner's onyx eyes glared at him. For a moment, Kinjo thought his father's spiky chestnut hair would shoot out toward the merchant. My answer is still no, Endo. I don't want anything more than what I already bought. Endo shrugged. Suit yourself, I'll go somewhere else then. Thanks for the business, as always, Makoto. Say hi to Aya and the kids for me. Kinjo stepped into the empty store after the man had left. After hearing the storeroom door close, his father turned to face him and patted his back. How are your siblings doing? A few long seconds passed as Kinjo racked through his memories of interacting with the man. They're doing fine. Satoshi is asleep, and Mika is watching over him. I heard you helped your mother with the dishes this morning. She looked well rested before heading over to the tailor's, Makoto mentioned, nodding in approval. Looks like you're growing up fast. After Mika grows up a bit more, you can probably help me with the shop throughout the entire day instead of going back and forth. Instead of retorting, Kinjo looked at the entrance of the store and the crates neatly piled near it. Why didn't you buy the soldier pills, Dad? That man said we could make lots of money from them. Do you hate shinobi? Makoto scoffed. Course not, son. In fact, a shinobi saved my life a few years ago. How? Kinjo asked with excitement in his voice. That's a story for another time. His father answered with a grimace. The point is, son, I'm no idiot. I might not have been the smartest kid in my neighborhood, but I was always good with the business side of things. Where is our store located? Between the western and southern gates, pretty far away from the main roads. Good. How many stores like ours are there on the main roads? About 10? 13, actually. That's not counting that giant monstrosity of a market building that opened up last month near the western gate. Makoto grumbled. And who lives in this neighborhood? Are civilians? Civilians that aren't exactly rich. Not to mention, there are hardly any shinobi in this area except for the patrol groups that pass by. Do you understand why I was against buying the soldier pills now? Or shinobi supplies in general? If a shinobi is heading off for a mission and needs supplies, like soldier pills, he can get them in one of the many shops near the main roads. Nobody in this area will buy them either, which means we'll lose money even if they are profitable. That's my son! Makoto cheered. Besides, he's probably trying to dump some of the leftover soldier pills Suna made during the war. Those things last a while, and Suna does make them best so. Now help me move these to the back. There were 4 containers near the entrance of the store. Kinjo was handed a small box by his father, holding a much larger crate. The young boy slowly moved towards the storeroom while his father easily rushed forward. Once they reached the back, they stacked their crates in an empty corner. What's in these, Dad? Some specialties from Suna, turquoise gemstones, salt, cosmetics, and nutrient pills. Turquoise gemstones? Makoto pulled out a gemstone from Kinjo's crate and handed it to his son. The sky blue stone glittered under the electric lights, though the surface was slightly misty. They're the less pure, inexpensive ones. Cheap yet beautiful. Even people in our neighborhood can afford them for jewelry or gifts. As for the other stuff, they're in demand everywhere. Salt for cooking and food, obviously. Cosmetics for women and nutrient pills for all folks. After another trip to carry the remaining crates to the back, his father dusted off his hands and wiped a trickle of sweat from his face. Kinjo was about to grab a pen and the inventory book when his father stopped him. I think it's time for you to learn how to work at the front of the store. You have an eye for business, just like me. I wouldn't be surprised if you could manage the entire store alone in a few years. The previous Kinjo might have been overjoyed, but the current Kinjo was frozen in place. For now, I'll show you how to use the register. Makoto slapped his back and ushered him forward. After that, you'll only need to know a few things here and there to run the front of the store smoothly. Kinjo reluctantly followed, several memories of his other life crossing his mind as his hands moved toward the register with familiar ease. It's beautiful, Kinjo whispered as he sat on his futon. The half-moon shone a dim light into his bedroom, and the clear sky was full of stars. I almost forgot what the night sky should look like. After futilely searching for a familiar star, he focused on the list in his hand. At the very top of the paper, he had written several words in large, bold letters. Find out how to enter the academy. Research relevant information. Become a shinobi. He frowned as he read the last several words. Maybe I should have purposely messed up earlier. Dad seemed a bit too happy. Working the register, greeting shoppers, and providing information about goods was easy and routine for him. His father seemed surprised but excited when Kinjo efficiently performed basic customer service. Damn, I guess it will be harder to convince him to let me as shinobi. I set his expectations too high for the wrong goal. I'll need to change his mind fast. Kinjo looked at the calendar hanging on the door of his room. Despite being in a vastly different world, his calendar looked similar to the one he had in his other room. Since Konoha was using the Gregorian calendar, did that mean Latin exists in this world? Do other nations use the same calendar or a different one like the lunar calendar? He bit his lips before he could ramble further. He remained silent for a few seconds as he sifted through his thoughts. Focus. Worry about the small details later. For now, I have to focus on my goals. Instead of sleeping, Kinjo crossed his legs and closed his eyes. He searched for something he knew he had but never used. A few long minutes passed as he tenaciously looked for a single spark of energy. Yet he was in the dark, and not a single flicker of light could be seen at the end. His mind fumbled blindly, searching for an existing oasis without a map. Shouldn't this be a bit easier? I know I have chakra, everyone does. So why can't I reach it? He relaxed his shoulders and sucked in a deep breath. This time, Kinjo carried out his search calmly, baiting his chakra to reveal itself as if he was indifferent to the matter. Still, nothing. Fuck. Kinjo cursed as he tossed the list into his desk and rolled onto his futon. I guess that's going on my priorities list. Suddenly, an idea emerged from the depths of his mind. It was so simple that Kinjo slapped his forehead with a groan. The fog in his mind lifted, and he was back on track. That will do. Kinjo was finishing the last spoonful of his breakfast when his father entered the dining room. The man placed his hands on his son's shoulders and grinned. Since your mom is staying at home and watching your brother and sister today, you're going to be with me in the shop. His mother was in his parents' bedroom with Mika and Satoshi. She was teaching Mika how to read and write while Satoshi was napping soundlessly in his crib. Actually, Kinjo looked his father directly in the eye. Can I go to the bookstore later? By myself? Makoto crossed his arms and stared at the boy. We can go together after the shop closes. Besides, the folks love you. I think a few of them came back to our store to see you around since I'm not much of an attraction. His mind was slowly settling in, and he was adjusting to his new life with only a few hiccups. He had been working with his father at the front of the store for almost a week, picking up a few business things here and there. Likewise, his relationship with his mother and his siblings was doing well. However, he wasn't in this world to live an ordinary, civilian life. The 6-year-old boy frowned internally and forced a few tears to sprout out his eyes. Today's the only day Mom is home, and I finally have some free time for myself. So please, Dad? Quivering as he watched his son's tearful eyes, the elder Takashi sighed. Fine, just help me out for a few hours, and you can go to the bookstore by yourself. Thanks, Dad, Kinjo said with a broad smile. He stood up and hugged his father's legs awkwardly, earning a soft pat on his back. Now hurry up and head downstairs. Since you're only going to be here for a few hours, I'm going to make sure you get a lot of work in. I'm heading out. As he was about to leave his family's store, his father stepped in front of him and held out a crisp bill. The leaf symbol was stamped on the right side, and the number 100 was printed clearly onto the corners of the bill. Makoto grinned as his son accepted the money. Since you've worked hard for the last week, think of this as a bonus to your allowance. Kinjo blinked rapidly. Thanks. Don't tell your mother, alright? She's been awfully angry that I've been stingy lately. The storekeeper sheepishly rubbed the back of his head as his eyes flickered to his room on the second floor. After waving goodbye at his father, Kinjo strolled down the street with his hands in his pocket. His right hand fidgeted with the money his father had given him, while his left hand brushed the allowance the previous Kinjo had been saving. 150 real hopefully, it's enough to buy a few books that I need. A fleeting image of him entering a used bookstore with his mother entered his mind. It was a long walk from his house, near the center of the village. The library was too far from his house, as it was near the academy. This meant that his cheapest source of books was the used bookstore in the center of the village. He looked around the bustling street, jogging his memory to remember the directions to his destination. It was February, but the sun was shining brightly upon the village, and there was only a slight chill in the air. He was one of many people enjoying the beautiful Saturday outside. First, I need to go to the gate. His short body purposefully strode towards the western gate, the closest village entrance to his home. His previous host had only been to the gate once, when his father had left the village for a trip to the land of rivers. While he needed to visit the bookstore to acquire more information about his new surroundings, the western gate held the clue to his first step toward becoming a shinobi. After walking for 20 minutes, he finally arrived at the western gate with sweat trickling down his forehead. He leaned on a wall for a few moments to catch his breath. As he rested, he spotted his target from the corner of his eyes. Instantly, his exhaustion melted away, and determination ignited in his heart. He pushed off the wall and scurried towards his person of interest, a chunin. Such an obvious, simple solution. Kinjo huffed as he approached the unsuspecting shinobi. Who else to ask about chakra than a person who actually uses it daily? The western gate was large and several times taller than Kinjo. The thick, green doors were painted with the hiragana for A and N, which translated to the word hermitage in his mind. Dozens of people entered and exited through the wide-open entrance, with some chunin inspecting cargo and people. One of the chunin was eating a bento on a nearby bench, his spiky black hair pointing out on both sides. His Konoha headband was fastened on his forehead, just above his narrow, squinted eyes. He was barely a teenager but sported a chunin flak jacket. If Brock from Pokemon existed in real life, he would look like this guy with more tame hair, Kinjo smirked. He strutted up to the shinobi with a smile. Hi. The chunin looked down to see a small child waving at him. He leaned forward and patted Kinjo's head. Hey, little guy, where are your parents? I'm old enough to explore on my own. A big kid, am I right? Yep, Kinjo answered. The shinobi was relaxed and in a good mood, which improved the child's spirits. I'm Kinjo. What's your name? Hayes. Did you need something from me, or are you going around meeting new people? Both. Are you a shinobi? Hayes adjusted his headband with a grin. Damn right. I'm a chunin. Which means I'm better than the average shinobi. Then you know how to unlock chakra. You mean finding your chakra? Kinjo nodded, prompting Hayes to place his bento to the side and placing his hands on the boy's shoulders. Are you trying to be a shinobi? I am. Since you're asking me about how to find your chakra, I'm guessing you're from a civilian family, and you don't know any shinobi. Am I right? Another nod, which made the chunin sigh. Listen, kid. Why do you want to be a shinobi? My dad told me a shinobi saved his life once. I want to be a shinobi to protect my family and home, Kinjo lied smoothly. Also, I want to do the cool things shinobi can do. That's a better answer than most kids your age, but still. Hayes dropped down to Kinjo's height, and his smile faded. Listen, I'm from a civilian family like you. I also wanted to become a shinobi cause it seemed cool. I had no idea what I was getting into when I entered the academy, but it was challenging. And when I became a genin I got thrown into a war. It's not a job for anyone, and you'll face danger daily. Many people drop out or get stuck as a genin, especially kids from civilian families. So, before you spend the rest of your life on this path, are you sure you want to become a shinobi? Kinjo almost flinched in surprise at Hayes' intense stare. He had never expected an active shinobi to try and talk him out of joining the academy. If anything, he had half expected the chunin to jump at the opportunity to help recruit a child for the shinobi forces, especially since the Leaf was at war. Perhaps it was because both of them were from civilian families. Or maybe Hayes saw far too many kids fail or die during his tenure as a shinobi. Whatever his reasons were, he waited silently with a grave expression. I'm sure, Kinjo replied confidently, returning the intense stare. I want to be a shinobi. Hayes let go of the boy's shoulders with a tight-lipped smile. Don't say I didn't warn you. Since you're insistent on it, I'll help you out. The chunin patted an empty spot on the bench, and Kinjo sat on it excitedly. He turned to his temporary teacher with wide eyes. I tried to find my chakra by focusing on it in my head, but I couldn't find it. Yeah, it's pretty stupid how easy and hard it is to find your chakra. Hayes shrugged. Technically, you're supposed to learn this in your first year at the academy, but I don't care. All those clan kids and kids with shinobi parents will already know how to control their chakra and even use jutsu. 2 months of practice will help you, though you'll probably lag behind the kids I just mentioned. Why 2 months? Kid, you want to attend the academy, but you don't even know when it starts? It starts in April. Oh, right. Do your parents know? Hayes rubbed his temples and took another bite from his bento. I'm planning on telling them soon. Yeah, like today. This is a big decision, kid. It's life-changing. You need to let them know right away. The requirements for the academy are pretty simple. Almost anyone can get in. Make sure to get the academy handbook, as it'll have all the information you need for enrolling. Do you know the title of the book? Just ask for the academy handbook at any bookstore. They'll know. Hayes clapped his hands and placed them in front of his stomach. Enough of that. Let's talk about chakra. So the way to find your chakra is quite simple. Place your hands in front of your stomach like this, and then concentrate on hardening your abs. Don't focus all your attention on your abs, though. Try to bring out something within your stomach. Your stomach has the largest concentration of chakra, so focusing on that part will draw it out. Kinjo placed his hands together in front of his stomach and tightened his stomach. He imagined his guts being pulled out from his body and urged his insides to push forward. For a moment, something stirred in his stomach, and he opened his eyes with a grin. However, instead of feeling the power of chakra, his belly growled. The boy's cheeks reddened while Hayes clutched his stomach and laughed. That's what happened to me the first time I tried it. You're on the right track, but let me explain it a bit better. What is chakra? It's an energy you need to be a shinobi. That's somewhat right. You can still be a shinobi, even with minimal chakra. Anyways, chakra is a combination of physical and mental energies. Stuff like exercising, using jutsu daily, studying, and meditating can make your chakra more powerful. You can also train to increase the amount of chakra you have, kinda like a muscle. So don't think of chakra as just energy. Instead, think of it also as a physical extension of yourself. Got it, Kinjo answered with a frown, returning to his meditation. This time, he tried to draw out the chakra in his stomach while imagining it as an extra limb made of energy, accumulation of his mental and physical self. He visualized it flexing and unflexing, recalling the sensations of adjusting to a new body. After a few agonizing minutes, something within heeded his summons. His insides burned hotly, a spark that quickly blazed into a firestorm. He shuddered as every part of his body heated up from the sensation. Each chakra point was a beacon of power, guiding chakra through every inch of his body. A sudden shift shook his body as his senses enhanced. His vision noticed the movement of a small squirrel nearby while his limbs lost pounds of weight in an instant. He threw punches into the air, a small whoosh pronounced with every punch. His memory of his past life crystallized, and he could remember every memory in vivid detail. In his drunken state, Kinjo attempted to lift the bench before stopping with a sheepish smile. Pretty cool, huh? Hayes asked with a knowing smirk. That power-up feeling will die down in a few minutes, but you'll still feel a bit different than before. Thanks, Kinjo exclaimed as he gripped his fists tighter. I feel ready for the academy already. Right, I almost forgot. Let me jot down a basic chakra exercise for you. It'll help you prepare for the academy. If you master it, you'll be one step closer to graduating from the academy. The young boy gave the Chunin a clumsy side hug as the shinobi jotted down the details of the exercise. It was a step-by-step instruction for the leaf concentration practice. I'm heading to the bookstore after this. Is there anything I should buy to study for the academy? Just the handbook should do. For now, train your chakra daily and exercise more. You'll need it. As Kinjo walked away, he waved cheerfully at the Chunin, who was now returning to his post. Thanks, Hei-san. I won't forget your help. If you ever become a genin, come find me, kid. I want to see how much you've grown by then. Hayes shouted with an enthusiastic wave. The used bookstore was the only shop in a narrow, forgotten alley just 3 streets away from the heart of Konoha. The exterior was worn and run down, the green paint cracked, and the windows were mismatched. New Tree, the store's name, was on the slightly crooked sign on top of its white wooden doors. Yet despite its shabby appearance, it was brightly lit, and the interior was filled with comfortable chairs and cushions. It was an allure that drew a considerable number of people to look through the surprisingly spacious interior and vast book collection. By the time Kinjo arrived at the bookstore, there were only a few hours before sunset. When he entered, his eyes scanned the numerous bookshelves that towered towards the ceiling. He spotted an elderly man sitting behind a desk near the entrance, and ran up to him. Hi. I'm looking for the Academy Handbook, a world history book, and books regarding shinobi and chakra. Another Academy student, eh? The older man guessed. He leaned forward and pointed to specific parts of the store. For the handbook, it'll be in Section 8. Quite a few kids dropped out this year, so there'll be plenty of copies there. History books are in Section 10, everything from Konoha's history to the world's history. As for books about shinobi and chakra, are you looking for anything specifically? Kinjo pondered upon the question for a few moments before replying. Do you have books about physical training and taijutsu? Sure do. It'll be near the handbooks in Section 8. Just to warn you, all of the books about taijutsu will be about the basic forms and katas. You won't find any advanced styles here. If you need anything else, feel free to come back to me. Thank you. Each area between the bookshelves was marked with a number, making Kinjo's search for the books straightforward. He looked through dozens of used Academy handbooks before discovering the most recent edition. The small, green book with the leaf logo cost only 20 ryo, which made him sigh in relief. Just then, he saw a small child wandering around by themselves with short black hair and a dark green dress, staring at the books and pulling out a small picture book with numerous famous shinobi in them. Kinjo raised an eyebrow as she flipped through the pages and stared at a particular kunoichi with blonde hair posing for the camera. The girl giggled and shouted, "So cool!" Kinjo looked around but found no one else in their section. "Where are your parents, huh?" She put down her book and floundered around, looking high and low. "Where mommy?" He knew what was coming, so he sat beside her and smiled before she turned into a teary mess. "Let's go find your mom." "Okay." She sniffed as her eyes stopped tearing up. "I want book and mommy. I'll get you the book too." He checked the price tag on the book and noticed it was only 10 ryo. "Come on, I'll take you to the front." 3 minutes later, the girl was walking away with her mother, who was firmly holding her hand. She waved at Kinjo as she walked away, to which he returned with a grin. "Come to think of it, I never got her name, huh?" As he turned around to find his next book, he bumped into someone and landed softly on his rear. He rubbed the aching area with a groan and looked up to see who he had run into. "Are you okay?" The girl holding out her hand looked vaguely familiar, though not from the previous Kinjo's life. She wore a high-collared indigo shirt with baggy navy blue shorts while her long brown hair was tied into a ponytail. A single mole stood out under her right eye, accenting her wide-open onyx eyes. "I'm fine," Kinjo answered while squinting his eyes at her. "Are you mad at me?" the young girl asked, looking away from his gaze. He blinked and bowed his head. "Sorry. I thought I'd seen you somewhere before. I'm Kinjo. I'm Izumi. Uchiha Izumi. I don't like staying at the Uchiha compound a lot, so I like to explore the village. Maybe you saw me when I was exploring." Kinjo's jaw slacked upon hearing the girl's name. Oh, that's cool. Are you going to attend the academy too? Izumi pointed to the academy handbook that had fallen out of the boy's hand. Yeah. He noticed that she was also holding on to an academy handbook. Maybe we'll get put in the same class. How old are you? 6. Then I'm older than you. She cocked her head. I'm 7. Silence hung over the two as the conversation sputtered out. It took several seconds for Kinjo to speak up. Did you come here to get the handbook? Yep. The new ones are only a bit more expensive, but my mom said we should save money whenever we can. Before living in the Uchiha compound, I used to come to this bookstore a lot. So I always come here to get books that I want. Isn't the Uchiha clan, rich? Izumi folded her arms and made a face. My mom and I only rejoined the clan recently, so we're kinda on our own. A lot of the other Uchiha still treat my mom as an outsider, especially since she never awakened her Sharingan and married my dad. They only treat me a bit nicely because I already have my Sharingan. You've already awoken your Sharingan? Let's not talk about it. The light in Izumi's onyx eyes faded as she looked at the ground and rotated her foot uncomfortably. Anyways, what clan are you from? Kinjo winced at her reaction but responded calmly. I'm not from any clan. My family runs a small store on the outskirts of Konoha, a bit south from the western gate. Can I come to visit you? Why? Izumi looked up, and her eyes twinkled. 'Cause I like to explore. I haven't been to your neighborhood before. Plus, we're already friends, and we might be classmates, right? We're friends? We are. I guess we are then, Kinjo chuckled. The store's name is Takashi General Store. It's a bit small, so it might be hard for you to find it. I'll just walk to your house with you then. Right now, after we buy our books. Izumi smiled. Are you getting any other books? A few more. Do you know anything about physical training and taijutsu? Yep. I'm pretty good at taijutsu. I spar with a few other Uchiha kids almost every day. She led to a nearby shelf and pulled out a few books. How much money do you have? Not a lot. I only have 150 real. Then just these 2 will do. Izumi handed him the battered books titled Genin's Guide to Physical Conditioning and Basic Taijutsu Forms and Katas. I have a lot of books about shinobi stuff back at home. Out of all the books I've read, these 2 are the best. Kinjo had a sinking suspicion on why she had a lot of books relating to shinobi skills lying around in her house but avowed to sidestep the obvious landmine. Thanks. These 2 are pretty cheap. I should have just enough money for one more book I want. Which one? Just a history book. I don't know anything about history, sorry. If you want, I can give you some of my money, and you can use them to buy more books. It's fine. Thanks for the offer though, Kinjo shrugged. This time, he led her through the store to section 10 and quickly discovered a thick book about the history of the world that was published 2 years ago. There was water damage on the cover and rips on the pages, but it was cheap. Altogether, the books came out to a grand total of 140 real. You really are a smart kid, Izumi mentioned when she saw the size of the history book. You're a kid yourself. As they left the bookstore after paying, all Kinjo could imagine was the dying face of the girl next to him. She was an innocent child who would be murdered due to the ego and paranoia of others. Even worse, she would die at the hands of her crush. She was no longer a fictional character. She was a breathing, living being. Izumi didn't deserve death. Neither did Itachi nor any of the other innocents that were involved in the massacre. Now he had the knowledge and a presence in this world. He could make changes. He just needed the power for them. Izumi flashed a carefree smile, and he gripped his books a little tighter. And that's when a pack of dogs chased me around the street. The people on that street were really weird and just watched and laughed as if it was funny. Izumi pouted. I never went back there after that. I could imagine, Kinjo answered with a relaxed smile. I do like dogs, but a pack of them sounds terrifying. Izumi nodded. My mom won't let me get a dog 'cause she said they're too loud. I'm going to make her change her mind though. I can't have pets 'cause my mom thinks my siblings and I are the pets. Kinjo mused, recalling those particular words from the mothers of his past and current lives. You're kinda small and cute, so I guess? Izumi giggled, patting the top of his head. He bristled at her touch, but she ignored it and grinned. Wait, I just realized if you're from the Uchiha clan, then do you know someone named Itachi? Yeah? He's super smart and mysterious. I've never seen him, even though he lives in the compound too. I see. What do you think you'll have for dinner? My mom really wants me to eat salad, even though I hate lettuce. Their conversation continued to drone on. Though there was a noticeable age gap between the two of them, Kinjo felt oddly at ease, and their conversation flowed naturally, with her mentioning random topics and him responding. Before long, they arrived at Kinjo's family store. As he stepped inside, he waved to Izumi, who enthusiastically waved back before hopping away onto the rooftops. Kinjo was sitting in front of his desk, studying the books before him while stroking his chin. The sun was barely setting into the western sky, though he had already finished his dinner just minutes before. Since he was free for the rest of the day, he was reading about basic katas and taijutsu forms that he would learn at the academy. No wonder the bookstore is allowed to sell this, Kinjo muttered. He had long forgotten most of his taekwondo katas and forms after he quit as a red belt. Even so, he recognized the book was for complete beginners, fitting for young kids without any shinobi background or training. Still better than nothing. I guess I can start with these and try remembering some of the harder katas from Taekwondo. As he placed the book aside, his eyes drifted to Genin's Guide to Physical Conditioning. The image of Izumi sprang into his mind, and he recalled his light conversations with her as they walked to his home. She didn't personally know Itachi. One of the items on his priority list was discovering which version of the Naruto world he was in. The novels, the manga, and the anime differed slightly, which meant that any information he had could be outright wrong. This meant that the information from the Itachi novels was accurate and reliable, or so he thought. Then he considered the events outside of the Itachi novels. Would they be consistent with the manga? The anime? Perhaps this world was a mishmash of every Naruto piece out there. The anime was the best, so I hope it's the anime Naruto world, Kinjo mumbled. He decided to put this new piece of information into the back of his mind. If he contemplated this issue any deeper, it would only demoralize him. Additionally, most plot points would remain the same. He just needed to focus on those. Instead of continuing to read, Kinjo decided to sit on his futon and focus on training his chakra. He tilted his head and placed a single leaf on his forehead. The notes that Hayes had written for him were clear and concise. While Kinjo knew about the leaf concentration practice, Hayes's notes outlined specific instructions on maximizing his training. The first step of the exercise was to focus on the leaf, and keep it attached to his forehead, with only his chakra. Since Kinjo had only unlocked his chakra several hours before, Hayes recommended he tilt his head slightly to ease into the exercise. He also warned the young boy to take it slow since it was challenging to control chakra in the initial stages of his training. Kinjo's newly unlocked energy circulated within his body, and he willed his chakra to his forehead. The flowing chakra was a torrent of warm water circulating through his body, providing warmth and vitality. A bead of sweat trickled down the side of his head as his chakra wildly fluctuated, with only a tiny portion listening to his command. His eyes rolled towards his forehead, focusing on the leaf as he tuned out everything around him. This exercise wasn't only used to improve chakra control but also to enhance a student's ability to concentrate, a method to better a person's mental focus. As the minutes ticked by, Kinjo felt a little more chakra gathering around his forehead and slightly straightened his neck. Instead of sticking to his forehead, the leaf slowly fell onto the floor. I feel like I just ran a marathon. Kinjo panted as he wiped the sweat from his face. He fell back onto his futon as the strain from the exercise echoed in his body. I barely managed to control it for 10 minutes. And I'm already this exhausted. He had silently hoped that he had excellent chakra control, or at least larger than average reserves. It seemed like he was out of luck for the former. As for the latter, he had no one to compare his chakra reserves to. He suspected that his chakra reserves were a bit above average from what he felt, but he wasn't sure. Hayes had pointed out one crucial fact contrary to his prior knowledge. Larger chakra reserves did not equate to worse control. There was little correlation between the two. Some were better at controlling their chakra than others. Some were also born with more significant reserves than others. Genetics did influence both, but Kinjo's parents were civilians, not shinobi. So until he had someone to compare his chakra with, he could not determine if his reserves were bigger than average or if he was just overreacting due to unlocking his chakra recently. One more time. I can do this. Once again, he willed his chakra to his forehead. His insides protested his decision by aching and growling, but Kinjo maintained his composure and focused on the leaf. He lost track of time, but he finally felt a trickle of more chakra responding to his demands. In response, he straightened his neck again to see if the leaf would stick this time. He never heard his body collapsing onto his futon as darkness overtook him. Kinjo stirred as something tickled his nose, making him sneeze loudly. He immediately bolted up from his futon and rubbed his eyes while looking around to see what awoke him. He sighted a leaf on his pants and flicked it off to the side. The room was dim, with only the waning crescent moon providing light for his eyes. His body was aching, but he was awake. He closed his eyes to remember what had happened before he collapsed and sighed. Chakra exhaustion? I used chakra for maybe half an hour. Then again, his body was still adjusting to the feeling and usage of chakra. Combined with his attempts to pour every bit of chakra into the exercise, he drained himself significantly faster than expected. It was an oversight on his part. He had failed to consider that abysmal control meant he wasted more chakra when using chakra techniques or jutsu. I'm definitely not a prodigy then. Itachi was already shooting fireballs at this age, wasn't he? The path of a shinobi was long and strenuous. He already understood that much. Thankfully, he still had some time to hone his abilities, but the sense of urgency was still present. He stumbled out of his room and into the dining room. The clock on the kitchen counter displayed 3:30 a.m. It would be 2 hours before even his father would awake. At least a few hours before his mother left for work. No time like the present. Kinjo ignored the soreness and stretched. He trudged back to his room and grabbed the book on physical conditioning, rifling through the yellowed pages. Volume builds muscle, whereas heavy loads maximize strength. Improving strength boosts recovery of stamina and chakra, increases speed and power, and pushes the upper limits of the body beyond. For beginners, it is important to build endurance and the core above all else. Expanding stamina will allow one to train and fight for longer periods, a crucial trait needed to rapidly improve one's growth. Strengthening the core improves balance and stability, a foundation to build upon. As such, this training regimen is highly recommended for those taking their first tentative steps in becoming a shinobi. The training regimen was uncomplicated yet grueling. Core exercises such as planks and glute bridges, and a light jog on Mondays. Long-distance endurance runs on Tuesdays. Wednesday's routine was the same as Mondays, while Thursdays were the only rest days. Fridays consisted of interval runs, while Saturdays were also endurance runs. Sundays were a mix of some core exercises and interval runs. The number of reps for the core exercises was listed. However, the regimen merely suggested until completely fatigued for running. I guess that's the point. It's telling me to push my limits and all, Kinjo commented. He marked the page with the regimen and closed the book. After he changed into his usual clothing and a red hoodie, he wrote a note informing his parents that he was out for a run and left it on the dining table. Kinjo ran out of his house and into the empty streets of Konoha. The silence was almost eerie, as he only witnessed his neighborhood being packed with people. Even so, he continued to jog, enjoying the fresh morning air and the clear view of the sky. His destination, the academy, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Or, in my case, a really tiny step, 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks for Kinjo to reach the academy during his morning runs. His family store and the school were on opposite ends of the village, a distance he greatly underestimated during his first run. And due to his abysmal chakra control, he could not utilize his chakra to supplement his running. Instead, he ran normally for the first 2 weeks, and his small physique struggled to reach anywhere near the academy. After the second week, he finally achieved a breakthrough in his training. It was the accumulation of practicing the leaf concentration practice several times a day, as Kinjo teetered on the edge of chakra exhaustion each time to improve his control. He could finally keep the leaf stuck on his forehead, though it still fell off if he straightened his neck completely. However, he thought it was impressive since his chakra control had been nearly non-existent just several weeks prior. And this milestone allowed him to incorporate another method into his training, mixing chakra with his physical training. The physical conditioning book briefly outlined how a shinobi utilized chakra for endurance training. It was said that the ability would come naturally if the person had a grasp of chakra control. Like the leaf concentration practice, he needed to will his chakra to his lower half and use it to enhance his speed. Thankfully, this was much easier to achieve than the chakra control exercise, as he only required a minimal amount of chakra for the process. Additionally, he only needed to direct his chakra to a general location in his body, compared to a single focal point. Even so, he could only run in short bursts while using chakra. While his control had improved significantly in his few short weeks of training, he still wasted far too much chakra for even the simplest of techniques. He sought to avoid suffering from chakra exhaustion while running, hence he placed limitations on using chakra outside of his home. Still, it was enough for him to increase the distance he covered during his runs, especially his interval runs. Now, he was running back home after catching a brief glimpse of his goal. His pace was noticeably quicker, yet he was panting heavily as he weaved through the streets. Due to the use of chakra, he could run faster than his old adult self in the other world. Kinjo decided to stop and take a quick break as his insides throbbed. It was an internal warning that he had used a considerable amount of chakra. The free dorms near the academy for students sounds nice. Kinjo took a long swig from the water bottle hanging from his neck and wiped the sweat out of his eyes. But running to the academy daily will help me improve my stamina. A 10-kilometer jog just to get to school. As the pain faded to the background, Kinjo slowly jogged back towards his house at a measured pace. His day's regimen consisted of interval runs, which was why he saved up the remainder of his chakra for the final kilometer to his house. The sun was barely rising in the east as he spotted the 1-kilometer marker from his house, a small furniture store painted blue. "I wish I had music to listen to while running," Kinjo remarked as he willed a familiar, warm feeling to wash over his lower body. He concentrated on the road ahead as the buildings around him blurred away as he raced down the street with familiar ease. He only realized he had arrived back at his house when he saw someone loitering at the entrance of his family's store. The girl turned towards the sound of footsteps and waved excitedly when she saw who was running. "Kinjo, Izumi," Kinjo answered with a smile. "I haven't seen you in a while." While the Uchiha had promised to visit soon, he hadn't heard from her since the day he met her at the bookstore. He had assumed that she had forgotten about him and the promise, and continued his preparations for the academy. "Sorry." Izumi clapped her hand together and bowed. "I was going to visit you a few weeks ago, but the elders kept me busy until yesterday." "What did the elders make you do?" The girl frowned. "They made me train my Sharingan continuously." "Do you have to train the Sharingan?" he asked innocently, well aware of the answer to his own question. "Of course. It's like any jutsu or technique. You have to practice with it to get better. I always faint if I use my Sharingan, so the elders were trying to teach me not to faint while using it. And training me on other cool jutsu stuff. So you can use the Sharingan without any problems now?" "Nope." Izumi grinned. I still faint if I use it, and I couldn't do any of the jutsu they taught me properly. The elders got sick of me and called me a failure, so now I'm free again. Kinjo's jaw dropped. Isn't that a bad thing? Not really. This is like the third time the elders tried to train me, and I failed each time. I think they want me to be another Itachi. Huh. Do you think you're better than Itachi at anything? Taijutsu, Izumi replied instantly. I can beat all the other Uchiha boys my age, though I've never fought Itachi before. He usually plays by himself. Then can you train me in taijutsu? Sure. It shouldn't be too hard. Were you running for training? Kinjo nodded. I've been training since the day at the bookstore. Won a race? Izumi asked as she tightened her sandals, her eyes glistening at the idea. Not right now. I'm a bit tired from running all morning. Kinjo yawned. Okay, then I'm going to explore your store. Now wait a minute. Izumi rushed into the store before Kinjo could continue. When he followed her inside, she was already chatting with his father. Hello, Takashi-san? I'm Uchiha Izumi. Nice to meet you. Her cheerful demeanor was infectious, and Kinjo's father smiled in response. Hello, Izumi. I'm Makoto, Kinjo's father. I'm guessing you're his friend? She is, Kinjo answered in her stead. I met her at the bookstore a few weeks ago. My son is all growing up. I thought I wouldn't be surprised by your maturity anymore, but look at you. You've got a girlfriend already. Makoto gently elbowed Kinjo's ribs with a knowing smirk. Make sure to treat her well. Kinjo pushed his hands into his face as Izumi blushed. She's just a friend. She wanted to see our store ever since we met. Feel free to make yourself at home then. We still have an hour until we open up shop. So until then, the whole store is yours, the man announced, a smirk still plastered on his face. Since you're Kinjo's friend, I'll give you a discount on anything you want. Izumi nodded excitedly and rushed to the front of the store. There, she picked up a peculiar-looking turquoise gemstone from a basket and awed at it. This looks like the Uchiha symbol. It does? Kinjo asked. He analyzed the stone, which was round with a small tail sticking out. It looks more like a tadpole. Maybe if I painted it the right colors, that would ruin the gemstone. I guess it already looks pretty as it is. Maybe I'll get this one and wear it as a necklace. The necklace and bracelet strings are on the shelf next to the basket, Kinjo's father called out from under the counter. A few minutes later, Izumi was sporting a turquoise gemstone necklace with a bright grin. If this is your store, then where is your house? My family lives upstairs, Kinjo replied, waving towards the ceiling. Do you have any siblings? A brother and a sister. Can I go meet them? Kinjo looked to his father for help, but Makoto nodded toward Izumi. Sure, the two went upstairs and greeted the rest of the Takashi family. Kinjo's mother looked surprised but pleased at Izumi's presence. Meanwhile, Mika bounced off the walls and scurried up to Izumi. Can we play together? Ah, she's adorable. Izumi cooed as she embraced Mika. I've always wanted a sister. Izumi and I need to do something for a second, Mika. Kinjo nudged Izumi towards his room. After that, you can play with her, okay? Make sure to be a good girl for Mom. Okay. I'll be the best girl for Mom, Mika declared while jumping into the air. Kinjo patted her head and ushered Izumi to his room. She tilted her head as he rolled up his futon and placed it by his desk. Why am I in your room again? Can you watch my kata and give me your opinion on it? You mean the basic ones from the book? They're easy. You've probably mastered it already. No, I came up with a few of my own, Kinjo lied. Izumi's eyes widened, and she eagerly nodded. He went into his old taekwondo stance, motioning his hands as if he was directing all his chakra into his core. He then proceeded to the first moves of the seventh taiguk form with grace. A knife hand strike to his right, followed by a straight front kick, a block with his left forearm, then a turn to carry out the first two moves from his left side, another block, this time with his right forearm. He then turned to the center and struck below the belt twice. These moves were followed by a flurry of punches, kicks, elbow strikes, high knees, and blocks. The kata lasted just over a minute. Wow, you came up with that on your own? Izumi asked while clapping lightly. It seems a bit slower and more flashy than the forms I was taught, but it looks good. Let's spar and see if you can use that in a fight. Whoa, not in here. And I have to go help my dad with the store after I eat breakfast. Izumi pouted. Fine. Whenever we get the chance, we'll spar. There's a park near your house, so we can practice there. The two left his room and joined Kinjo's mother and siblings in the dining room. Mika ran around excitedly and skipped to Izumi. Big sis, let's play. Sure. What do you want to play? The older girl answered brightly, patting the younger girl's head. Let's play Minko. Here. Kinjo handed Izumi his deck with a knowing smile. I knew she would ask to play that with you. It's the only game she plays these days. While the two girls played a loud game of Minko, Kinjo sat on one of the dining chairs and watched over his brother, who was gurgling happily. His mother was cooking in the kitchen, preparing some extra food for the guest. 10 minutes later, they were all sitting around the dining table and eating a light breakfast of rice, miso soup, eggs, tofu, and pickled daikons. It's nice to have you over, dear, Kinjo's mother remarked as she handed the girl a bowl of miso soup. How did you meet Kin? Izumi accepted her bowl and ate a spoonful of rice. We met at the new tree bookstore. My. Kin and I went there once when I needed some books on sewing. What were you there for? I was getting the Academy handbook. Kinjo was also getting one, and I bumped into him by accident. We became friends after. The Academy? Kinjo's mother's eyebrows rose. What Academy? Kinjo interjected. Oh, the Shinobi one. Izumi replied cheerfully, making Kinjo groan. Kin? What does she mean by you attending the Shinobi Academy? The boy in question began to sweat as something stirred in the air around his mother. I meant to tell you when I was ready. You want to attend an academy dedicated to killing? A war is going on right now, and you want to become a shinobi? The matriarch's voice became louder and louder with each word. I will not let my sweet, little boy become a killing machine and risk his life every day. No one in our family has ever been a shinobi, and there won't be any in the future. Seriously, Kin. Did you think that I would allow you to become a shinobi? Do you think I will sleep well knowing you could be dying somewhere? What about taking over your father's store? You enjoy working there, don't you? He winced as his mother's words dampened his mood. Izumi looked at the two with furrowed brows. Wait, you didn't tell your mom about joining the academy? I was going to tell her after I trained and improved a little more. Unfortunately, he forgot to warn Izumi before the conversation took that turn. Is that why you're running in the morning now? Kinjo's mother fumed as she slammed her spoon onto the table. Kin, you are grounded. Grounded. I can't believe I am having this conversation with one of my children right now. She turned to Izumi, who flinched from the woman's glare. Were you the one that corrupted my son? He never showed any sign of wanting to become a shinobi until he went to that bookstore. Mom. Kinjo stood up and placed his left arm in front of Izumi protectively. She has nothing to do with this. This is between you and me. It's not just me, young man. She dropped the affectionate nickname she used for Kinjo and tightened her fists. It's also your father. Suddenly the door to the dining room opened, and Kinjo's father sauntered into the room with a quizzical smile. I heard shouting from the store and came up to see what was happening. What's this about? Kinjo's heart dropped as he slowly turned to look at his father. He straightened his posture and looked the man straight in the eye before dropping the bombshell. I want to go to the Shinobi Academy. The Shinobi Academy, unlike his mother. His father mused at Kinjo's declaration and maintained an unreadable expression. Why? You told me that a shinobi saved your life a few years ago. I want to be a shinobi to help people and protect all of you. I'm serious about this and am willing to dedicate my life to it. The two parents looked at each other, remaining silent as an uneasy peace reigned in the room. Kinjo's mother's expression softened, but her scowl remained. His father frowned, a facial expression Kinjo rarely saw from him. I see. Makoto lumbered towards his son and towered over him. I'm not entirely surprised. The moment Izumi mentioned her family name, well, I suspected it. Uchiha, the man's wife, spat. I should have guessed. They hardly leave their compound unless they're shinobi. Aya, please stop scaring Izumi. She's a kind, friendly girl. I'm sure she had nothing to do with our son's decision. The Uchiha moved to the side to see Kinjo's father smiling reassuringly at her, which she returned. He looked at his eldest child, who stood defiantly. You remembered what I told you? Yes, I did, Kinjo answered stiffly. I didn't tell you the whole story then, but I guess it's the right time to tell you. Meiko, just tell him no and be done with it, Aya urged. Give us some space. As his father dragged him away to his parents' bedroom, Kinjo slowly waved to Izumi. She hesitantly waved back, shrinking when Kinjo's mother turned to her. When he glanced at his mother, all he could see was the depth of her anger in her eyes. The master bedroom was noticeably Spartan, with only a futon, some sewing equipment, and 2 dressers. After they entered, his father pulled out a coin from his pocket and fiddled with it before speaking. You see, son, a shinobi saved my life 2 years ago. I'm sure you're smart enough to figure out what was happening then. An eerie image of a giant monster destroying entire neighborhoods popped up in Kinjo's mind. I do. When the demon attacked our village, I was visiting a friend's house near the center of the village, right by the old marketplace. I was in the direct line of fire. The demon unleashed some sort of power and destroyed the entire block I was in. He gripped the coin tightly and closed his eyes. My friend didn't make it. I only survived due to dumb luck. A shinobi? His father nodded. My legs were pinned by the rubble of my friend's house, and I was too weak and injured to lift it off me. The house was still standing but on the verge of collapse. So I waited for my death in the dark for several minutes as the house creaked and groaned. I yelled for help, but I was sure I would die. It was loud that day, son. There was screaming and crying everywhere, and I was one of thousands calling for help. Then, a miracle happened. The man rubbed the coin and looked past Kinjo. Someone had heard me and dashed through an opening in the walls. He lifted the rubble off me and carried me out just minutes before the house caved in. Before I could thank him, he collapsed in my arms. He placed the coin right in front of his son's face. Kinjo stared at the foreign coin and noticed red marks on the surface. Dried blood. He was dying, Makoto whispered. When I lifted him up, I noticed a torrent of blood on my arms and clothes. He had a gaping hole in his stomach. I got him to the hospital as fast as I could limp, but he died shortly after arriving. He managed to wake up for a minute before he passed away. He handed me this coin, telling me it was a good luck charm for him, and wanted me to have it. After he died, I asked for his information, to know who my savior was. I was told he was fighting the demon and evacuating civilians on the front lines that terrible day. He was rushing to the hospital after receiving a mortal injury. He might have been alive today if he didn't stop to rescue me. He was an orphan who went against all odds to become a fine chunin. His name was Toya Satoshi. Satoshi, Kinjo repeated, his eyes widening at the name. Yes, like your younger brother. It was the least I could do for the man who sacrificed himself for a nobody. Makoto let out a bitter laugh. Our village lost a good man that day, and I sometimes wonder if I should have been the one to perish instead of him. Kinjo only offered a tentative nod as he listened to his father ramble. His father smiled. Ha! And now, my eldest son is trying to run away from the family business and go about his own path. It's what I want to do, I know. I can tell. I am your father, after all. When you were working in the store, you never seemed happy. If anything, you looked bored and uninterested. Yet, when you told me you wanted to attend the Shinobi Academy, I saw a fire in your eyes. Something that I have never seen from you before. His father sat on the floor and gingerly placed the coin on his lap. I'm not going to try and stop you. You're determined, and even if I try to stop you here, you'll try to find a way regardless of my opinion. Now, before I let you enroll there, I need to make sure of something. Shinobi have a reputation for being ruthless killers, soldiers that carry out the will of the village. But that man Satoshi had something more that made me realize that shinobi aren't that shallow. He had a heart, even as a shinobi. Can you promise me that even if you become the greatest shinobi this world has ever seen, you will still retain your heart? To always be my and your mother's son and the older brother to your siblings? A shinobi with a soul? Of course. Yes. Makoto handed him the coin and slapped his back. Then you have my permission, son. Go out there and let everyone know about the great Takashi Kinjo, part-time general store worker and full-time shinobi. Kinjo accepted the coin and carefully placed it in his pocket. I won't let you down. I know you won't. You know what? Maybe I should have taken up that offer to buy soldier pills. I have to support my son somehow, after all. Kinjo sighed at his father's attempt at a joke. Just when I thought you were a little cooler than before. You mean you didn't see me as an amazing father? I'm hurt, son. The father laughed as the son groaned. Also, don't be too harsh on your mother. She wants what she thinks is the best for you, and I understand her views. And she's not entirely wrong about her worries either. Since you've made this important decision, I trust that you've been working hard not to make us worry in the future? I've been training every day, and I can even control my chakra somewhat. That's my son. You'll be in the academy for several years, so you have all the time you need to improve your shinobi skills. By the time you graduate, I'm sure you'll be more than strong enough to take care of yourself. Now, let's go out there and face the music, shall we? When the two left the room, the occupants of the dining room turned toward them with expectant eyes. Kinjo's mother waited patiently with her arms crossed, glancing at the Uchiha occasionally. Izumi was silent and squirming in her chair, her gaze avoiding the Takashi matriarch. Though Mika was busy playing with Takashi, her head was turned toward her father and brother. He's going, Kinjo's father announced. Makoto, Aya, trust me. It's something he absolutely wants to do. There's no point of us chaining him here when he wants to go out there. The woman's face reddened as she massaged her temples. Do you not care that our son might die in some foreign land, never to return home? You're underestimating him. He's already determined to become a great shinobi. He wakes up earlier than me so that he can train. Even if he's the best, he isn't immortal. Lord First was killed in battle, even though he is considered the greatest shinobi in history. And what about Lord Fourth? A freak of nature killed him. Our son can't deal with the threats out there, and if our village is attacked again, who better than our own son to protect us? He is growing up very fast, Aya. I think he might be smarter than me already. If he continues to grow at this rate, then I'm sure there will be very few people that can threaten him by the time he grows up. They'll send him to war when he's 12, Makoto. 12? Some kids are being sent out much younger than that. Then he has 6 years to train and prepare himself. He's already training hard now. Imagine what he'll be like in 6 years. Even if he turns out to be a skilled shinobi, I don't want to lose our son. He'll be turned into a mindless killing machine, like all the other ones in this village. He won't. Kinjo's father turned to his eldest son with a grimace. I know he won't. Kids, I think you should step outside while the adults talk. The argument between his parents had captured Kinjo's complete attention, to the point where he finally realized that his brother was crying and waving his fists while screaming, Mama. Kinjo ushered Izumi and his siblings to the store, which was still closed. As he listened in on the commotion upstairs, Izumi tapped his shoulders and bowed her head. I'm sorry if I caused you any trouble. No, I think this might be for the best. They needed to discuss this now instead of later. It's my fault anyway. You have nothing to apologize for. Kinjo answered. I think your mom hates me now. She's just overreacting. I'll tell her how great you are when she's done arguing with my dad. Izumi looked at the floor and rubbed her hands. Still, I feel like I messed things up. I'm sure things will die down soon. Until then, can you show me a few katas? I can't show you any of my clan stuff, Izumi replied with a frown. I can show you other ones though. I thought you only knew your clan's forms, Izumi scoffed. That would make me way too predictable. I'm the best at taijutsu, remember? I know a bunch of forms and katas. Come on, let me show you. She ran into one of the aisles and started to demonstrate her knowledge. Kinjo barely managed to stop her from accidentally side-kicking a shelf. He tensed his shoulders as he watched her go through a series of motions slower than before, his attention drifting away from his parents to focus on the overeager Uchiha. He never discovered what his father said to persuade his mother, but several hours later, both of his parents gave him permission to enroll at the academy. His mother looked defeated when they reaffirmed his father's decision, while his father smiled jovially. He was going to be a shinobi. Come on, Kinjo. You have to try harder than that. Easy for you to say, Izumi. Kinjo focused on the girl before him, aiming at her torso and striking quickly with his fists. She was weaving and dodging all his strikes without breaking a sweat. The two were in a small park that was a 5-minute walk from the Takashi family's store. It was a tranquil recreational area with a pond, an open field, and numerous trees that towered over the narrow footpaths. The park was in a quieter part of the neighborhood, and only a few people were inside the park, making it a perfect location for the two future academy students to train. It had been a few days since Kinjo's parents agreed to let him join the academy, and he was learning the basics from his friend in preparation for the academy, which started in a month and a half. The duo had been sparring for over an hour, but the boy had yet to hit her. His taekwondo kata was useless for sparring, as he was too slow to utilize it, and the moves were too predictable. Meanwhile, Izumi had only been evading his hits instead of attacking, as they knew she could knock him out in one go. You're trying to punch too hard, Izumi commented as she redirected Kinjo's punch with the palm of her hand. You can't leave any gaps when attacking. Otherwise, someone better than you will wallop you while you're off balance. Her partner didn't respond verbally but shortened his punches and jabbed while his forearms protectively guarded his core. She grinned as one of his punches grazed her guard. Better. I'm going to fight back now, so try to keep up. In a flash, her right fist was just inches away from his face, and Kinjo stepped back in a panic. A blink and her legs were barreling towards his stomach, which he blocked with his arms. His bones creaked as he pushed her leg away and aimed a knife hand at her throat. Izumi grabbed his hand and struck his jaw faster than he could raise his guard. While being hit, he flailed out with his right leg, wobbling from the blow and the sudden imbalance from his attack. Always keep your eyes on your opponent. You're as good as dead if you don't know where your opponent is, Izumi advised as she grabbed his leg, pinning him while striking his chest with her right palm. Also, if you look away while attacking, your attacks will be weaker in this. It also makes your opponent more aggressive. Kinjo staggered back, gasping loudly. Izumi came up to him and began to babble. Are you okay? Do you want to stop for today? I'm sorry if I hurt you, it's fine, he assured her while rubbing his aching chest. I can keep going. Usually, Izumi was carefree and excitable. However, when she started sparring with him, her expression turned serious, and she emitted an air of professionalism and maturity. To Kinjo, the contrast was jarring. It was as if she had aged several years in seconds, her analysis and comments about his fighting style reinforced by wisdom beyond her years. She nodded hesitantly. Don't flinch when you get hit. If your opponent hits you, stay calm and focus on landing a clean hit so that you can hit them back. Then the beating continued. She was graceful as a ballerina when she fought, shifting her feet swiftly and moving with practiced ease. Her ability to fluidly switch between various forms made taijutsu look like an art, a choreography. However, instead of spinning into the air in front of an entranced audience, she was pummeling him into the ground with ruthless efficiency. Several minutes later, Kinjo was lying on the ground in a heap while Izumi stood over him with a sheepish grin. He could taste dirt and a hint of iron in his mouth. I don't think I'm that good at teaching. Izumi sighed. No, you were fine. The young boy groaned as he pushed himself off the ground. I learned a lot from this. This wasn't even a spar. I was basically a punching bag. You're a lot better than when I first started sparring. You'll get better over time, Izumi insisted as she helped him up. I'll teach you something called Arakiryu the next time we spar. It's really cool, and there's a lot of grappling. Let's move on to the next part of our training today. They took a short break to recuperate and sat on the fresh grass in the clearing. She picked up a dandelion and blew on it, watching as the small fuzzy petals floated off into the cloudy winter sky. Is your mom still mad at me? Yeah, she's just being childish. Kinjo frowned as he recalled his parents' fight 2 weeks ago. I think we just need to give her some time. After all, I'm the first in my family to become a shinobi. This entire experience is new to my family. His mother conceded the battle but not the war. She continued to treat Kinjo affectionately but tried using her relationship with him to make him reconsider his enrollment in the academy. The Takashi matriarch also shunned Izumi, warning him of the dangers of hanging out with a dangerous girl like her and grumbling about the Uchiha clan. As such, Izumi was barred from visiting his family home, though she occasionally visited the shop and played with Mika. I like your mom, but she's scary, Izumi confessed. It's not just you. Mika was wary of my mom for a few days after the argument. Even Dad looked like he wanted to sleep in his shop instead of his room. Maybe you can visit my house and meet my mom. She's a lot nicer. Isn't the Uchiha compound off limits to outsiders? Kinjo inquired. Izumi tilted her head. Who told you that? Anyone can visit as long as a Uchiha accompanies them. Huh, I didn't know that. I'm still getting used to the rules too. She waved her hand as she looked up at the sky. I didn't want to move to that stuffy place, but my mom said we had to. She said it was a new rule or something. Kinjo froze as he digested her words. The seeds of rebellion were already planted. All he could hope was that it wasn't too late to uproot them. Back to training, Izumi exclaimed as she shot up from the ground. I'm gonna teach you the easiest jutsu you need to master to graduate from the academy, the transformation jutsu. Why is it the easiest? Because you don't need to have good chakra control to use it. And you told me you're having trouble with your chakra control. I'm not that bad at it. Kinjo retorted. I can stick the leaf on my forehead without craning my neck for like a few seconds. Does it usually take this long to master that exercise? He still practiced his chakra control and stamina daily, but it took longer to see results than expected. Sticking the leaf on his forehead was only the first step of the exercise. He still had to learn how to rotate it in the direction of his chakra and then rotate it in the other direction. At times, he couldn't tell if the leaf was sticking due to his chakra or sweat. Maybe? I think it depends on the person. I took a while to master that too. Izumi scratched her head. I'm not that good with ninjutsu, but I'm pretty sure I'm better than you. Ouch. It's true. The elders might think I suck cause I can't use my Sharingan or learn all their complicated jutsu stuff, but I know how to use the 3 basic jutsu. The boy patted her shoulders. You don't suck. You might not be great at ninjutsu, but you're great at taijutsu. Besides, you know 3 more jutsu than I do, and you're good enough to teach me. Izumi blinked before smiling. I never thought I would be lectured by a kid that's younger than me, but thanks. Again, you are only 1 year older. Still older, she teased. Anyways, transformation jutsu. The hand signs are simple: dog, boar, and then ram. When trying to use it, you should imagine your body shifting into the person you want to turn into. Picture your chakra changing your outer appearance, kinda like changing your clothes. That's a bit weird, but yeah, I hear you. What should I transform into? It's easier to transform into something close to your size and shape, so how about you transform into me? What? Kinjo stared at her with widened eyes. She stared back with a quizzical smile. What? You're only a bit shorter than me, and you can look at me before transforming. It'll turn out more accurate if you transform into me, if you say so, sure. Kinjo observed his counterpart with a reluctant gaze, noting all her prominent facial features and visualizing his face turning into hers. He also noted her clothes and limbs, imagining the correct shade of purple and blue for her shirt and shorts. He tried not to overthink about turning into a girl. I think I'm ready, Kinjo declared as he warmed up his fingers. Remember, dog, boar, and ram. You got this. Kinjo loosened his shoulders and placed his hands together, calling upon his chakra to change his outer appearance. His mind recalled the hand signs that Izumi had shown several days prior. Left hand flat over his right fist, both of his wrists inwards and touching each other. He winced while maintaining the awkward position, hands together vertically, with the left thumb on top. Transformation jutsu. A puff of smoke surrounded him, and when he saw his body again, he noticed some peculiarities, such as the fact that his transformation didn't go all the way. He remained a dude, that was for sure. Kinjo looked around and realized he could see Izumi eye to eye without any support. His fingers were longer and more slender, and his hair was lighter and reached his shoulders. Glancing at his clothes, his shirt was brighter than Izumi's, and his pants were slightly too long. This is really weird. Izumi giggled as she walked around him to inspect his handiwork. First off, you don't have any eyebrows. What? Come and take a look. The duo scurried to the pond, and Kinjo stared at his reflection. His jaws dropped as Izumi laughed uncontrollably next to him. He had no eyebrows, the anti-Lee. And he noticed his nose and ears remained unchanged. Remember, you have to focus on all aspects. You got my eyes, my mouth, and my mole right. But you got a lot of things wrong, Izumi lectured. Yeah, like the fact that I'm still a guy. Oh. Izumi blushed. That is definitely wrong. I think I might have messed up the boar hand sign. That sign is uncomfortable to form. You get used to it. That's why you should also exercise your wrist every day. You need flexible wrists to do the hand signs fast and to throw things like kunai. Kinjo nodded as he rotated his stiff wrists. Anything else? Make sure you're thinking about sending the chakra across your body when doing the jutsu. That might be why you stayed as a boy. Got it, thanks. I guess I'll practice transforming into my siblings and parents too. Izumi giggled again. Make sure not to transform into your mom without eyebrows. I don't think she'll ever forgive you for that. They laughed together as Kinjo dispelled his jutsu and tried not to imagine his mother without eyebrows. Only a week remained before the academy started, so Kinjo decided to expand his skill set before his first classes. Located in the northeastern parts of Konoha, the Uchiha compound sat in a forgotten corner near a lowly populated residential area. It was detached from the central business districts of the village and away from the major entrances. The Hokage Tower loomed to the west like a watchtower, an eye carefully observing the clan. The Konoha Military Police Headquarters was located between the two, an unsteady middle ground between Konoha and the Uchiha. He stood in front of the entrance to the Uchiha compound, a tall, intimidating gate with 2 Uchiha banners adorned on the top. Several large buildings peeked over the area's walls, while the open gates revealed an ordinary-looking street filled with shops and people. At first glance, the compound seemed like any other part of Konoha. Yet, the intense gaze of an Uchiha Chunin sitting in front of the gate, the endless walls, and the lack of civilians entering the district suggested otherwise. It wasn't its own district. It was its own nation like San Marino, surrounded by a much larger Italy. Kinjo frowned. I thought the compound was smaller than this. Our clan is one of the biggest in Konoha, with over 1,000 people. A lot of them are shinobi, but some are civilians too, Izumi remarked. So, everyone in the clan lives here? Pretty much. Maybe a few people with some Uchiha blood live outside, but they're only distantly related to the clan. They walked through the gate, with Izumi smiling and waving at the Chunin watching them. Surprisingly, the shinobi waved back, his expression softening at the girl's antics. Izumi noticed Kinjo's stiff shoulders and patted his back. Takashi is nice. He watches over my training sometimes. He just likes to glare at people cause he thinks it makes him look scary. Does he just sit there all day? No, silly. He's only there once a week for a few hours. He's not the only entrance guard. The pair strolled through the streets, with Kinjo eyeing the various shops and houses. The buildings were noticeably more traditional and were painted in darker shades than he had seen in his home street. Tiled roofs, sliding doors, and front yard gardens appeared to be the norm in the district. He also counted more than a dozen Uchiha banners in a single street alone, reminding him of his hometown in his other life. It was also quieter than he was accustomed to, with only faint whispers and sounds of movement reaching his ears. Here we are, Izumi announced as she placed her hands on her hips. Home sweet home. Her home was on the topmost floor of a 2-story weathered apartment. The apartment was a mix of traditional and contemporary design, a modern complex with old-fashioned windows and doors. It was in better shape than his own house, but it certainly wasn't luxurious. Yet, Kinjo marveled at the apartment appreciatively as he climbed up the stairs with her. Where did you live before you moved here? In the southeast, near where the Nara clan lives. Why, just wondering. Kinjo fidgeted as they reached her apartment, labeled as 206. Is your mom okay with me visiting? Yep. She likes it when my friends visit. I think she gets more excited than me sometimes. Izumi chattered as she smiled. I'm sure she'll like you too. She opened the door and threw her shoes aside while running in. Mom, I'm home. The apartment was surprisingly well furnished with a clean kitchen, a modest living room with several couches, a balcony that oversaw much of the Uchiha compound, and 2 bedrooms. A woman was sitting on the living room sofa when the duo walked in. Welcome back. Izumi's mother hugged her daughter with a grin. After she finished hugging Izumi, she turned toward Kinjo. This must be your friend from outside the compound. It's nice to finally meet you, Kinjo. My daughter has talked about you almost every day. She was a physical inverse of her daughter, dark caramel eyes and jet black hair, which fell loosely at her hips. She was significantly taller than Kinjo's father, yet her warm expression ran contrary to her large presence. Then again, his mother was kind until she was angry. Kinjo prayed that he would never anger Izumi's mother. I'm just gonna grab Dad's stuff and go out to train with Kinjo, Izumi shouted as she stormed off to her room. Would you like any cookies? Izumi's mother asked as she pulled out a container from the kitchen cupboard. I baked them yesterday. Sure, thank you. He graciously accepted 3 matcha cookies and chewed them softly. These are good, ma'am. That's good to hear. I was afraid Izumi would eat all of them by herself, but thankfully you dropped by. She sat on one of the dining room chairs and motioned for him to sit on the sofa. She hasn't beaten you up, has she? His thoughts betrayed him, and images of his best portrayal of a human rag doll popped into his head. No, Izumi's mother sighed. That girl, she gets far too overexcited at times. I'm sorry if she hurt you badly. It's alright. I'm used to it. Well, you shouldn't be. She frowned unhappily. I swear, she's too much like her father. He stopped eating and looked at her, his eyes widening at the comment. Is she? She's looking at pictures of her father. He passed away 2 years ago while doing his duties as a shinobi. Her tone was rather monotonous and dispassionate at the mention of her dead husband. Kinjo's brows furrowed as he placed the last cookie on the table. Is there something wrong, ma'am? It's nothing. Just give my daughter a few minutes, and she'll be out. Instead of inquiring further, he slowly ate the last cookie as a heavy silence permeated the room. I'm back, Izumi announced as she kicked open the door to her room and rejoined them. She was carrying a small pouch of kunai and shurikens, along with a tanto. What were you guys talking about? We were just waiting for you, sweetie. Make sure to practice safely and come back home before 6. Of course, Mom. Come on, Kinjo, let's go. Izumi practically dragged Kinjo away as his eyes remained on her mother. Something wasn't right, but was it his place to ask? Kinjo flicked the kunai towards his target, his fingers lightly holding the bottom half and releasing it with minimal resistance. It spun several times before bouncing off the wooden dummy's arm. The practice range was only a short walk from Izumi's apartment, and the two were training their kenjutsu with varying degrees of success. Thankfully, Bare wooden walls covered the range's perimeter, preventing loose projectiles from hitting a passerby. That's better. Aim for the body though, since it's the biggest target on a person, Izumi suggested. Another flick. This time, the kunai spun only 3 times before lodging into the dummy's stomach. Izumi grinned and patted Kinjo's shoulder. Nice, at least I'm better at this than the tanto. Kinjo winced as he recalled his poor attempt at swinging the tanto. It involved a partially destroyed fence, a sliced bonsai, and a scolding from a chunin for his reckless swinging. Now watch me again when I throw the kunai. I think you're using your hands too much when throwing. You should only be flicking your wrist with a small burst of chakra. That'll make the kunai go straight and fast. She took several steps back from Kinjo's position and turned into a blur as she released the kunai directly into the dummy's head. Can you do it a bit slower? Sure. Izumi shrugged. She winded up slowly, throwing the kunai with minimal use of her dominant left hand. It landed on the target's neck. Right, I think I get it. Kinjo copied her motions with his right hand and launched a kunai straight into the stomach. Another attempt resulted in a hit to the shoulders. Let's practice a bit more, and then we can go back to my house to eat. He nearly accepted without much thought but quickly shook his head. I think I'll go home after this. I need to help my parents with a few errands. Oh. She looked down at the ground with a pout. Okay. My mom is cooking tonkatsu, and it's really good. Maybe you can stay for a little bit, maybe next time. By the way, your mom mentioned your dad earlier. Izumi stiffened. She did? Yep. Did she tell you about, him dying during the attack? Kinjo finished. So you know now. She picked up a kunai and threw it shakily, striking the dummy in the leg. She probably told you I was looking at his pictures while you were waiting. She did. Izumi took a deep breath and sat on the ground feebly. My dad died a hero. He died fighting the Ninetales and protecting the village. He didn't need to be there, but he was. He wanted to protect the village, so he died fighting. I was near the Ninetales when it attacked, and my dad saw me. He rushed to save me while fighting and died. That was when I got my Sharingan. Kinjo remained silent for a few moments before speaking. I'm sorry for asking. And for your dad dying. It's okay. You're my friend, so you should know. Izumi smiled bravely. He's why I want to become a great shinobi. A stream of tears trailed from her eyes, and Kinjo gently hugged her from behind. He patted her head as she sniffled. He would be proud of you. As he held her, he wondered why Izumi's mother reacted the way she did to the mention of Izumi's father. Was there a problem with their marriage before his death? Or was something missing from Izumi's recollection? Whatever it was, he hoped it wouldn't jeopardize the relationship between the two. These moments gave him the motivation to continue his work. He could never be truthful to the people around him, but perhaps it was for the best. Exploiting his meta-knowledge to change his surroundings would help people. At least, that was what he kept on telling himself. Whatever he expected from the academy, it certainly wasn't this. Kinjo didn't expect a grand ceremony filled with adoring civilians and the Hokage himself. After all, the only remarkable thing about his class was Itachi, who looked impassive as he led the pack. However, he did expect some sort of entrance assembly. Or at least some kind of presentation or tour of the academy for the new students. Instead, he barely had time to wave to his father and sister before he and his 4 dozen classmates were marched into a classroom. The academy was large and spacious, with over a dozen different rooms, an outdoor training ground, a practice range, and a small library. Everything looked new, from the shiny hallway floors to the fresh white paint on the walls. Kinjo could tell that the academy had been remodeled or built recently while walking through the campus. After he and the others were ushered into one of the larger classrooms, Kinjo awaited quietly in his seat, while the room was filled with the loud noise of chatter. Izumi found him a few seconds after they had entered and sat beside him with an excited grin. We're finally going to be shinobi. After 6 years, Kinjo answered, drumming his fingers on the desk. Maybe if we do well, they'll let us graduate early. I need to practice my ninjutsu then. Settle down. A man shouted as he limped to the front of the classroom, causing the noise to fade. He was middle-aged with an eye patch on his right eye, his sole functioning eye glaring at the students around him. His silver hair glistened from the sunlight coming through the windows. Welcome to the academy, Squirts. The name is Taku, and I am your Chunin instructor for the rest of your time in this place. My job is to teach you everything you need to survive and thrive as a shinobi. I am not here to be your friend, nor am I here to coddle you. You will learn to outsmart, outpower, and kill your enemies under my tutelage. If you cannot keep up, you will work harder to graduate and become a fine shinobi of Konoha. Am I clear? Yes, sensei. Kinjo, Izumi, and a handful of others were the only ones that answered him clearly. The reactions from the rest of the class were mixed. Taku snapped, a crackle of electricity sparking between his fingers. The loud noise made several students jump in their seats. Am I clear? Yes, sensei. The children answered enthusiastically, with a tinge of fear. Kinjo studied the Chunin with narrowed eyes. His teacher was undoubtedly different than what he had imagined. Then again, Konoha was still at war with Kumo. Perhaps the academy emphasized discipline and hard work to prepare future generations better for the war effort. If you thought that your first day here would be relaxing and meeting new people, then you are wrong. Taku declared. At that moment, a short boy with gray hair walked through the doors and handed the Chunin instructor a stack of papers. He walked down the aisles and passed them out, speaking loudly as he went. This is a practical assessment to test your knowledge before you begin your official classes at this academy. This will not affect your placement within the class, but you should finish this test to the best of your abilities. When Kinjo received it, he saw the sheet was filled with difficult questions that covered a variety of subjects. There were 30 questions in total, and none were multiple choice. You may begin. You have 90 minutes. Kinjo read the first question in detail and frowned. Why did Kumo launch a dastardly invasion of Konoha shortly after the death of Lord Fourth? Explain the historical grievances between the two villages and the reasons for the outbreak of war. Guess I shouldn't be surprised they're training us to be a Konoha shinobi. Kinjo muttered under his breath as he jotted down what he remembered from his history book. He recalled the rivalry between Konoha and Kumo was traced back to the destruction of Yuzushiogakure. Kumo invaded the land of whirlpools with Kiri and razed it, wiping out one of Konoha's chief allies during the height of the Second Shinobi War. When Kumo attempted to build an outpost on top of Yuzu's ruins, Konoha intervened, and the war escalated quickly. After that, relations between the two villages were cold even on the best days. Kinjo quickly wrote everything down and read through his answer again. The book was published months before the death of the fourth Hokage, but it would have to do. He quickly moved on after noticing that 5 minutes had passed. When is it acceptable to kill civilians? Give a specific example that supports your claims. Kinjo blinked. He decided to skip that question for the end and moved on to the next question. It had a picture of a large cylinder with 2 cones on each end, along with various measurements. Your assassination target is hiding in a grain silo similar to the above figure. Based on the measurements, what cubic feet volume is needed to drown your target? Every question is going to be about fucking murder. I swear, Kinjo swore silently. After running through a few equations, he had his answer. He peeked over at Izumi, who was still staring at the first question blankly. Before moving on, he patted her on the arm and gave her a thumbs up. She revealed a strained smile before looking back at her empty test paper. Regardless of his personal feeling on the matter, he continued the test and finished several minutes before the deadline. The only other person to finish before him was Itachi, who maintained an aloof expression while staring out the window. The rest of his time at the academy was filled with lectures by Taku. Since Kinjo and his classmates were new, they were expected to spend the first year at the school in the classrooms with some physical training weaved in between the classes. There were 100 shinobi rules that they were required to memorize. Some were simple, such as rule number 4, a shinobi must always put the mission first. Others were longer and more extreme, such as rule number 81, a shinobi must destroy any opposition that threatens their village, without exceptions. Apparently, such was life for a shinobi. They were even required to carry around little green books with the shinobi rules to memorize. Towards the end of the lecture on the rules, a chunin walked in and spoke with Taku privately for several minutes before the white-haired instructor restarted his talk. Alright, squirts. I will now go over why we're being attacked by the scums in Kumo. Apparently, most of you don't know anything about the current war, so it is now my job to keep you informed. Before I explain the reasons behind Kumo's aggression, are Uchiha Itachi and Takashi Kinjo here? Itachi stood up immediately. Kinjo could not see his expression, but he was sure that the older boy was calm and collected. Meanwhile, Kinjo took several seconds to stand. His eyes were fixed on his chunin instructor as he smoothed his shirt. Izumi noticed Kinjo's reaction and patted him on the arm comfortingly. The head instructor is looking for both of you. Go to the meeting room by classroom number 208 immediately. Kinjo hurried from his desk to the sliding doors, giving Izumi a hesitant grin before walking through. When he stepped outside, he glanced at the room numbers and looked around the hallway. It's that way, he flinched, turning around quickly to find a raven-haired boy with obsidian eyes. It was the boy genius himself. Kinjo stood silently for a few moments before opening his mouth to speak. Hi, I'm Takashi Kinjo. I know, I heard the instructor. With that, Itachi walked away, presumably towards their destination. So much for light conversations, Kinjo uttered as he followed his counterpart. They're probably calling me in with Itachi because I did well on the written exam. I did graduate college after all. He entered the room shortly after Itachi. 2 adults awaited their arrival inside the small room, which was furnished with a large oak desk and several chairs. A young man with black hair and sharp onyx eyes was seated in one of the chairs, while a beautiful woman with brown hair and pupilless brown eyes stood next to him. Both of them sported flak jackets. All the eyes in the room turned to the duo as they stiffly stood in front of the shinobi, Uchiha Itachi and Takashi Kinjo. I am Chunin Instructor Mimura Hamaki, and this is Head Instructor Yamanaka Asami. I believe you're aware of why we called you here. The male shinobi asked. Takashi and I did well on our written test, Itachi stated, a hint of confidence in his voice. Correct, she stated as she observed the two. Itachi, you received a perfect score. Kinjo, you missed 2 questions. However, only 2 other students answered even 10 correctly. Most of that test was from a written exam the 6th years took last year. Which means, intelligence-wise, you 2 are smart enough to graduate. Which questions did I get wrong? Kinjo interjected as he looked at Itachi. The cryptology question and the question involving Fuinjutsu. Oh, back to what we were saying, she dropped into the seat across Hamaki. As the head instructor, I have decided to allow the two of you to take a mock graduation exam. If you pass this mock exam, you will be allowed to take the actual graduation exams after you finish the necessary courses required for a genin. I will take charge of Kinjo's test, Hamaki announced. Itachi, you will be overseen by the head instructor. However, we will be at the same place for the first part of the test. A few minutes later, the group was at the outdoor training ground with Itachi facing off against Kinjo for the taijutsu portion of the exams. Kinjo gulped as Itachi smoothly entered his stance. As is tradition, please make the seal of confrontation by raising your index and middle finger. The head instructor requested. Both students raised their fingers at each other. Kinjo narrowed his eyes at Itachi, whose face remained unchanged. Kinjo finally shifted into his default form, a blend of Taekwondo and Arakiryu, an old fighting style Izumi taught him. You may begin. No one moved for several seconds. The stares of the two instructors hung heavily in the air as Kinjo shifted his arms to block any blows to his core while keeping his hands open. Itachi observed him briefly before appearing in front of him in a flash. A fist struck Kinjo's nose, and a kick crushed his stomach. An elbow nicked his head as he slammed into the ground, stirring dust into the air. Specks flew into his eye, causing him to close his eyes as tears threatened to spill out. Struggling blindly, his hands managed to grasp Itachi's leg and pulled while pushing himself up with a yell. The stinging in his nose faded as something smashed into his shoulder. Kinjo tumbled onto the ground again, his right hand instinctively floating to his numb shoulder. He finally opened his eyes, his surroundings blurred by Itachi's frown. Barely avoiding a stomp to his chest, Kinjo rolled away and rose onto his feet with shaky legs. Sand clung off his arms, and every grain was a pound of weight dragging him back to the earth. He swiped at Itachi's neck, only to find air and a kick he shielded with his arm. His heart pounded louder. Kinjo lashed out with a kick, scraping Itachi's unprotected leg as he was whacked in the temple by another punch. His legs were swept off the ground before he could grab Itachi's neck. His final attack parried with a simple sidestep. He came to with a mouth full of sand and old breakfast. The dizziness made it difficult to swallow. Winner, Itachi, the head instructor declared, nodding towards the victor. Now carry out the seal of reconciliation by linking your fingers like a handshake to end the fight. Kinjo weakly raised the fingers on his right hand and stumbled towards Itachi. His counterpart frowned deeply but locked fingers with him and shook them. Good fight, Kinjo croaked. You too, Itachi deadpanned. The pair were separated shortly after, with Kinjo heading off to the practice range with Mimura while Itachi went into an empty classroom with the head instructor. He's a once-in-a-generation prodigy, that's for sure, Hamaki commented as he looked through his superior's assessment of Itachi. He has no faults. Perfect scores in every part of the test, and he completely destroyed Kinjo during the spar. Poor kid. Kinjo needs much more work on his taijutsu, Asami admitted. Though, I don't think any student in this academy can beat Itachi in a spar. However, we are not here to praise the Uchiha clan's new rising star. We are here to assess two students fairly, and decide their placement. The Chunin were back in the meeting room after Kinjo and Itachi had finished their mock exams. The two boys were outside while they waited for the instructor's decision. Piles of notes about their assessment of the students were scattered across the table, and files filled with the students' personal information were also present. Asami read out the student file for the other Chunin to hear. Takashi Kinjo. Born to a civilian family. None of his family members are shinobi, yet he scored higher than most 6th years on that test. Nobody is expected to pass that test as the first year. The written mock test was a wartime standard to spot bright students who could graduate early. Despite the grandstanding for the other nations, Konoha needed more shinobi desperately. They were still recovering from the Ninetales attack, the day which dozens of Chunin and Jonin perished. Not to mention the war against Kumo due to Kumo's military intervention into the land of hot water after the Yukage was mysteriously assassinated shortly after Lord Forth's death. Konoha couldn't show weakness, especially not during these troubling times. She had heard rumors about Itachi and expected him to pass, but Kinjo was a nobody. The fact that he nearly achieved a perfect score despite being from a poor, civilian family was enlightening. So his intelligence can be scored as an S? Each student had a rank assigned to every skill and trait after their 3rd year at the academy. It was scaled to the academy's standards, though it offered a glimpse of a student's potential. Itachi and Kinjo were exceptions, as they had taken the mock graduation exam and considered advanced for their age. S was the highest rank for an academy student, high enough that their abilities in that area were considered better than the average genin. F was the lowest, meaning the student had almost no future in that area. A for now. Kinjo has a few holes in his knowledge, but otherwise, he's astonishingly intelligent. I agree with your grading of his taijutsu abilities, A.D. Hamaki placed his own thoughts into the report. He has potential and grit, but he needs more training. His form was sloppy, and his attacks were all over the place. He couldn't do anything against a superior opponent. Asami winced while recalling the brutal scene. The civilian-born student was utterly trounced by his opponent, and the fight lasted less than a minute. When Itachi landed the first 2 blows, he nearly missed his elbow strike out of sheer surprise. I think he expected Kinjo to fight better since he thought Kinjo was a prodigy like himself. He managed to hook Itachi's legs, but he got pushed down again after a shoulder hit. After that, it was just Itachi dismantling whatever was left of his defense. I saw Kinjo land maybe 2 hits during the entire fight. Hamaki interjected casually. She nodded. What about the rest of the mock exam? Any more flashes of brilliance from him? Hamaki cleared his throat. His accuracy with the shuriken and kunai was average. I gave it AC. He hit the target most of the time, though only about half of his throws landed on vitals. He managed to break the genjutsu I discreetly put on him by overloading his chakra, which seemed a bit accidental but effective. Genjutsu is AC, though that is only for breaking genjutsu. Can he not cast genjutsu? I'll get to that in a second, Hamaki continued. As for the 3 basic jutsu, he could only do one, the transformation jutsu. He managed to use the jutsu without a hitch, and his transformation looked exactly like me except for a few minor details. His chakra control is a bit underwhelming, but not the worst. It'll improve over time, so I gave him AC in ninjutsu. However, I don't expect him to be competent in casting genjutsu soon. What about his capacity? He was the only instructor in the academy who was a natural sensor. Certainly well above average. In fact, besides his intelligence, his chakra reserves are the only thing comparable to Itachi. I ranked it as AB. She loudly tapped her fingers on the table. So Kinjo is not a prodigy, correct, but he has potential? He's much more mature than the other kids in his class, other than Itachi of course. He has the fortitude and attitude to improve quickly. If we encourage him to nurture and develop his fundamental shinobi skills, I believe we can have a capable shinobi within a few short years. And since he's already book smart, he can solely focus on improving other skills, such as taijutsu and ninjutsu. Asami finished, her fingers coming to a halt. I was going to send Kinjo back to his original class. However, I think he might be better off training with kids older than him. Adapt or die, she rolled her eyes. We're not Kiri. If Kinjo doesn't adapt, we'll send him back to his original class. For now, stick him in a class with 4th years and report his progress back to me in a month. Of course, ma'am. As for Itachi, have him join the 6th years. He'll be graduating after he finishes the required courses. What happened? Izumi cried as she fretted over Kinjo. Itachi happened. Kinjo flinched as her hand brushed a large bruise on his right arm. He destroyed me in the spar for the mock exam. Classes had finished early for the day, and the two were making their way toward the Uchiha compound to continue their training. Kinjo's body ached at the thought, but he gritted his teeth and continued his march. He directed his mind to soak in the sunny spring weather and the pleasant aroma of buns and rice as the duo passed through the outskirts of the business district near the Hokage Tower. Oh, that Itachi. I'm going to beat him up the next time I see him. Nobody hurts my friends, Kinjo waved his hand. It was a practice spar, and he was better than me. Besides, you've beaten me up more than he has. Not to mention, he only had a few months of training under his belt. Itachi had been training for years, hence the massive gap between them in terms of skill. He was also in the process of finding a suitable fighting style, something he would need to work on immediately. I was teaching you, not beating you up, Izumi retorted. Is that why you were gone for the whole day? The mock exam thing? Nope, I got put into a class with 4th years. 4th years? You're skipping the first 3 years? Yep, she frowned. That means we're not going to be in the same class. I'll still train with you every day, and we can still eat lunch together. Kinjo pointed out. I guess why can't I join the 4th years too? I'm better than you at sparring and throwing kunai. I got a near-perfect score on the written exam. That means I can focus my training on taijutsu and ninjutsu instead of reading all day like the other first years. Then help me study too. Izumi grabbed his arm and looked at him with widened eyes. Please? Kinjo winced as he heard something crack in his shoulder. Sure, just take it easy on the arm, please. Oops, sorry. She let go of his arm with a sheepish grin. I knew you were smart, but I didn't know you were that smart. So today, let's go to my house, and you can help me study until dinner. We can study after we do our usual training. But you're bruised and injured all over. It's fine, Kinjo assured. I need to train. I can't reach Itachi's level unless I train more, Izumi frowned. Okay, but we're still going to study today. I'm going to get really smart and join your class. I'll make sure to be the best teacher so you can move up quickly. Before they could enter the Uchiha compound, the duo was stopped by an expressionless boy standing just in front of the gate. He raised an eyebrow. Itachi, Kinjo. Itachi acknowledged with a curt nod. He stared at Izumi, tilting his head questioningly. Izumi glanced back at him, her cheeks reddening by the second. She ran past Itachi without looking back. I'll meet you at the practice range. It seemed the ship was sailing faster than he had expected. An awkward silence engulfed the boys as they looked at each other pensively. Yes? Kinjo asked as he lightly rubbed his sore nose. Itachi stared but refused to say anything. Kinjo sighed. Apology accepted. I didn't even get to say hello before you beat me up. It was a test that I wasn't ready for, especially not against a genius. That drew a small stir from Itachi. You are also a genius, are you not? Only academically, and in certain areas for that too. You have no set form, your fundamentals are horrible, and you're weak in ninjutsu and genjutsu as well, Itachi remarked tonelessly. Kinjo snorted. Thank you for the confidence boost. But you've been training hard, that I do know. You trained with that girl several times in our compound. Were you? No, you just stick out like a sore thumb. I see, Kinjo answered with a frown. Well, do you have any other insults for me? Itachi blinked as his eyes drifted to the side to avoid eye contact. Why do you train so much? Why do you ask? Because most kids our age like to play and goof around rather than train. I'll answer if you do. I asked first, Itachi replied flatly. Kinjo rolled his eyes but smirked. I have people I want to protect and things I want to change. My dad was saved by a shinobi who was bleeding to death. The shinobi would be alive today if he had left my dad to die, but he didn't. He told me to be like that person, a shinobi with a heart. That's what I aim to be, a shinobi that helps people and brings peace, even if it's risky. I see. Itachi hesitated before turning away. Wait here for a moment. Within the blink of an eye, Itachi disappeared, and Kinjo was alone with the gatekeeper staring at him. He waved awkwardly at the impassive man, who nodded curtly. While he waited for Itachi to return, Kinjo reassessed his words. He wasn't proud that he appealed to Itachi's core ideals to earn some brownie points, but it was a surefire way to gain Itachi's trust and goodwill. Most of the people he were close to in canon, such as Shursui and Izumi, were like him in that aspect. But to think that in about 6 years, Itachi would wipe out the entire Uchiha clan and carry the weight of killing his family and kin. That was one of many reasons that Kinjo was willing to risk himself to make changes. What he told Itachi wasn't a lie. No child should have to murder his family and friends to atone for the sins and failures of others. No child should have to watch his parents die at the hands of his beloved older brother due to the machinations of old men. No child should have to watch his father be sacrificed for reasons he couldn't even begin to understand. No child should be emotionally abused and scorned for a crime they didn't commit. These things were typical in this world. Being a shinobi was unforgiving, and mercy was as scarce as water in a desert. Yet, if wanting to prevent these things was too idealistic or radical, then perhaps Itachi was right. Maybe they should do something about it. Or at least lay the groundwork for others to build upon. Someone needed to open up that can of worms, and he was willing to be the can opener. What are you doing? Kinjo pivoted with his hands at the ready, grimacing at the sudden movement. Itachi held a piece of paper while gazing at him, his inscrutable expression prominent, as always. He looked away as he answered. I was just waiting for you to come back. What's that? Before speaking, Itachi dragged him into the compound and away from the prying eyes of the gatekeeper. It's a chakra induction paper. Just channel some of your chakra into the paper, and it will show your affinity. Sounds simple enough, Kinjo answered, accepting the paper and channeling chakra into it. So why are you offering me this? Itachi frowned, the first emotion he had displayed since beginning his conversation with Kinjo. I thought you wanted to improve yourself to protect and change the world. No? I do, then don't ask. The paper ignited and turned into ash. Not surprising, since most people that live in Konoha have a fire affinity, Itachi commented. What affinity do you have? Water. Really? Yes. He looked at the ashes on the ground and looked back at Itachi. Why are you having me test my nature affinity when my chakra control is still shaky? My father drilled into me that seeing results is a great motivator. Even if you can't use any fire jutsu immediately, you'll naturally improve with practice and increase the quality of your training. Do you know any fire jutsu? Kinjo asked. Itachi shrugged. He pulled out a scroll from his pocket and handed it to Kinjo. A few, but it'll be easier for you to learn reading this. He clinched the sizable scroll and stared at it. Are you allowed to give me this? Those are common fire jutsu. Simple for me to obtain but difficult for a civilian like you. They'll be good goals for you to work toward and give you a head start with your elemental training. Kinjo remained silent as he ran his finger through the edge of the scroll. Instead, it was Itachi that broke the silence. I hope we can spar again soon, on equal footing. Itachi stuck out his hand for him to shake, and Kinjo gripped it with every ounce of his strength. They shook. Kinjo opened up his new treasure and devoured its content. Every line was analyzed, and every hand sign was absorbed within 10 minutes. It had been 3 days since Itachi had handed him the scroll, though he hadn't touched it since he received it. His days were filled with classes from morning to mid-afternoon, additional training with Izumi until dinner, and then study sessions with her until he returned home. After his defeat at Itachi's hands during the mock exam, Izumi was beating taijutsu lessons into him, mentally and physically. She also blushed whenever Itachi's name was mentioned, which was adorable. He didn't want to practice any jutsu from the scroll in the Uchiha compound since he wasn't sure if the scroll contained Uchiha-specific jutsu. Launching Uchiha-only fireworks within the district would only lead to awkward questions. However, Izumi was busy spending quality time with her mother this evening, which gave him some free time to read through his scroll. He was in Training Ground 52, a forgotten training ground that bordered the village's walls near his home. It was devoid of trees, with only a few small shrubs dotting the rocky landscape. A large pond sat in the middle, an oasis in the desolate wasteland called a training ground. The earth was untouched and flat, the perfect site for his independent training. Great fireball jutsu, and a few other fire jutsu after I get the hang of the fireball. Itachi doesn't hold back, does he? Kinjo remarked as he finished reading and let out a low whistle. His chakra control training was coming along well, as he could finally stick the leaf on his forehead with only his chakra. The next step in the exercise was to rotate the leaf in the direction of his chakra flow, which was clockwise. That was harder than he had expected, which wasn't surprising. His steady improvements in control allowed him to learn the body replacement jutsu and the clone jutsu. His clone looked similar to Naruto's clone during his graduation exam. He was far from mastering them, but he was slowly getting there. While it was exciting to learn and use the 3 basic jutsu, Kinjo was giddy at the opportunity to learn something more flashy and dazzling. 6 hand signs, simple enough. Kinjo went through the hand signs quickly. Focus on collecting chakra and kneading it into fire. Try to use a limited amount of chakra for the first attempt. He didn't want a repeat of the fainting incident the first time he tried to overexert his chakra. After taking a deep breath, he recited the name of the jutsu and fired. Great fireball jutsu. Something erupted from the depths of his stomach. It quickly swept through his throat and entered his mouth, expanding at an alarming rate. It was as if he had eaten ghost peppers, and the spiciness was sweeping through. Instead of a giant fireball, a thin stream of fire erupted out of Kinjo's mouth. Immense heat basked his face, yet his mouth felt like a warm tornado was whipping through. He held in a cough as his throat and lungs were choked with oxygen. The fire roared for a few seconds, scorching the earth in front of him and creating a small ditch. Kinjo enjoyed the view before he was cut off the flow of his chakra as his insides twitched. His great fireball created a trench that was several inches deep. It was as wide as his foot and was several feet long. It wasn't impressive, but it was his first nature jutsu, and it worked. Before he could let out a cheer, he stumbled on his feet and fell, his legs shaking and his mouth gasping for air. For the moment, the ground was the softest bed in existence, and sleep threatened to overtake him. He lay there for several minutes as the effect of the jutsu faded. He thought he hadn't used much chakra for the jutsu, yet he was sweating and aching. My fireball wasn't that big, but I used a lot of chakra. My control still needs work. It was the only logical explanation for his sudden dizzy spell. Due to his nascent chakra control, he wasted much chakra trying to use the jutsu. Instead of his chakra contributing to the power and intensity of the fireball, much of it was lost while he was kneading it to fire. As a result, his fireball was narrow and weak instead of the powerful and impressive great fireballs he remembered from the anime. Still, no wonder this is a rite of passage, Kinjo mused. You need a fair amount of chakra to use it correctly. He hoped that Itachi wasn't screwing with him and that anyone could learn the great fireball jutsu. I'll do the fire transformation exercise, then should have done that before the actual jutsu itself. His eyes wandered to the pond, a shining oasis in the wasteland. He shook his head to ignore the traitorous thoughts in his head, yet they persisted. No, I shouldn't try walking on water. It doesn't matter if I would look like Jesus, it's still a bad idea. I definitely have to master the leaf concentration practice first. He took a tiny step forward, which was met with his other foot stepping back. No, Kinjo sighed as he ran towards the pond, placing the scroll off to the side. Screw it. I still have some chakra, and I'll look like Jesus. Here goes nothing. He slowly placed a foot onto the surface of the water and stepped. Brother, why are you soaked? It's a long story, Mika. Shinobi stuff? Yep. Kinjo returned home after dripping water everywhere in his neighborhood. He had underestimated the depth of the pond, and the water came up to his chest. Thankfully, he was sensible enough to leave his scroll on dry land before his overeager attempt at walking on water. The first 2 steps on the pond were a success, but after that, reality hit him like a truck. After the 3rd step, he sank like a rock. He wasn't Jesus. He was just a shinobi in training. What kind of shinobi stuff? Mika asked as Kinjo walked towards his room. Walking on water stuff. That's so cool. Can I walk on water? He laughed, and patted her head as she jumped excitedly. Maybe when you're older, Mika. After changing out of his wet clothes, he walked into the dining room to see his family gathered together for dinner. Satoshi was crying ma and pa every chance he could, though he did let out a key when he saw Kinjo. Mika was eating a beef rice bowl with gusto, inhaling the food and asking for seconds. His father was in a boisterous mood, gesturing with his hand and yammering away as his mother ate her food with a tired smile. Can you believe that Heir tried to ask for a bigger discount on the beef jerky? I sold him some of my personal stash since that beef jerky is hard to find. Instead of being grateful, he asked for more and for cheaper. The audacity of that man. Makoto beamed when he saw Kinjo shuffle into the room. He ruffled his son's hair and slapped his back. How is my favorite shinobi doing? Shinobi in training, Dad, Kinjo answered as he picked up his utensils. Dinner was simple yet looked mouth-watering. Some clear soup with vegetables, pickled ginger, and a beef rice bowl. The delightful smell wafted into his nose, making his stomach growl impatiently. Did you do anything interesting today? His mother turned away at the mention of his shinobi training. Her warm expression toward him hadn't changed, yet he could feel the unspoken rift even at the dinner table. Meanwhile, Mika stopped eating her favorite meal and looked at them with widened eyes. Before Kinjo could speak, she interjected, "Brother walked on the water today, just 2 steps actually." "I'm still practicing," Kinjo admitted. "Still, that's impressive." "I didn't know Shinobi could walk on water." His father rubbed his shaven chin. "Maybe you can help me run messages to the land of water. I've always wanted to import some seafood from there." "I'm still ways off from running on water, Dad." His father sighed. "One can dream." "Did you learn anything else that's cool?" Mika asked. "I can breathe fire now, though only for a few seconds." "It's pretty exhausting," she gasped and turned to their mother while babbling. "Mama, I want to breathe fire too." "I think one shinobi in the family is enough, dear," his mother emphasized as she stroked her daughter's head. "Remember, Kin, no shinobi training in the house or the store. You need to rest and spend time with your family too." "Yes, Mom." Kinjo nodded. His mother was clearly unhappy with his enrollment at the academy, showing a strained smile every time he announced the results of his training. Yet, she was much more tolerant of his choice than her initial reaction to his declaration of becoming a shinobi, though it was a bit unnerving to see her smiling and coddling him every time he was home. After finishing dinner, Kinjo sat in his room with a leaf slowly spinning on his forehead when he heard a knock. He scrambled to hide the leaf in his desk and opened the door to see Mika waiting with an impatient pout. "What is it, Mika?" Mika rushed into the room without giving an answer and slammed the door behind her. "Show me, the transformation jutsu again?" She bobbed her head. Kinjo peeked his head out the door and glanced around the hallway. There was no one in sight. He locked the door and shushed her. "You have to be quiet then, okay?" "Okay." Mika cheered a bit too loudly. "Sure, okay." After running through the 3 hand signs, he glanced at her. Transformation jutsu. A puff of smoke blinded him before disappearing. He was several inches shorter than his usual height, and an uncomfortable emptiness settled in below. "Well?" he said, his voice sounding lighter and higher than before. "Hi, Mika." "I'm Mika," the real Mika said while giggling. "I like this better than your transformation into Jiraiya-sama." His room was now occupied by 2 Mikas, one still laughing and the other looking embarrassed. "Next time, I'm turning into the Hokage," Kinjo mentioned. "Being a girl is still weird." "Isn't that disrespectful to Hokage-sama?" Mika asked while circling his transformed body. "It means he's so awesome that I want to be like him." "Okay. Then if you turn into Hokage-sama, you have to talk like him." Kinjo rolled his eyes. "How do I talk like him?" She cleared her throat and deepened her voice. "You, shinobi. Get me a beef bowl." "That's what you would sound like if you were the Hokage, Mika." Mika beamed. "I get beef bowls if I become Hokage?" "Of course. And you also get free Minko cards." Kinjo joked. "I want to be Hokage then. I'm going to be a shinobi like you, brother." Usually, he enjoyed joking around with his sister, but now was not one of those times. He set his hands on her shoulders and shook his head. "Mika, Mom and Dad need you here to look after the store and Satoshi. Besides, being a shinobi is hard." "Nua. I don't want to work in the store. I want to go out and do cool stuff like you." "It's cool being a shinobi, but it's also dangerous," Kinjo lectured. "At the academy, the teachers tell us it's dangerous outside the village. We're fighting another village right now. Also, as a shinobi, you have to be able to do terrible things like killing." "Why are you a shinobi then, brother?" "Well, someone has to protect the village and our family." Mika placed her hands on her hips. "Then I can too. Mom isn't too happy with me being a shinobi. She's going to cry if you decide to become one." "It's okay. I can take care of Satoshi, make Mama and Daddy happy, and be a shinobi," Mika declared. "Mika, so teach me, bro-sensei." "I said no, Mika. Besides, you're too young. Then I'll grow up faster than you and become the best shinobi." He smacked his hand into his face and exhaled. He should have expected something like this when he decided to become a shinobi. His siblings in his other life also tried to imitate his actions and choices, even when they were teenagers. Mika was the same, perhaps even more so. Kinjo could only hope that she would soon grow out of her wanting to become a shinobi phase. It was hypocritical, but he wanted her to grow safely and healthily. As a shinobi, either was guaranteed. Besides, he didn't want to see his sister murder people or go through some of the more awkward parts of kunoichi training. "Maybe you'll grow up and decide you want to do something else. Sewing is pretty fun, right? Mom is teaching you that." Mika made a face. "I hate sewing." "Is there anything else you want to be then?" "Shinobi." A frightening image of his sister smiling and laughing while shredding other shinobi to pieces popped into his mind. "God help us all," Kinjo mumbled in English. He transformed back to his original self and ushered her out the door. "Okay, but don't tell Mom or Dad that you want to be a shinobi, okay? It'll be our secret." "Okay." As he watched her waddle into her room, he silently prayed to whatever deity that sent him here that she would take an interest in something other than being a shinobi soon. "Remember to eat all of your lunch." "I will, Dad." It was a week after he had received the scroll from Itachi. He had felt physically and mentally exhausted the day after, but he had recovered within the week and continued his chakra training at the old training ground. He had already worked out in the morning and was preparing to leave for school. "Oh, and take this." His father handed him a bag of beef jerky. Kinjo accepted the bag and tilted his head. Why? Well, you're a growing boy who's becoming a shinobi. You need all the protein you can get. He pulled out a book and showed it to Kinjo with a smirk. I've been reading this to help you become bigger and stronger. How to Feed a Child Shinobi. The title is really unimaginative. I know, but it's fantastic. I've been trying to get your mother to cook some of the meals written in this book, but she looked horrified. I'll keep trying though. Was she horrified because you know? Or was she horrified cause the recipes in there are bad? His father shrugged. Who knows? Maybe I shouldn't have suggested a cricket-based dish for the first request. Dad, kidding. Now one more thing before you head off to the academy. Is it another joke? I see you're starting to understand your old man better. Makoto walloped his back, knocking the wind out of Kinjo. If you need anything, let me know. We might not be rich, but we'll support you as much as possible. Can't have the first shinobi in our family fail because he couldn't afford a kunai or two. Kinjo stared at his father and dipped his head. He knew he was being selfish. His path to becoming a shinobi meant that his family would have to make sacrifices, even if he received a scholarship. And while they were high on his priority list, it was always second to his primary goal of helping others with his foresight. In his mind, he justified it by claiming that helping people would strengthen Konoha and would protect his family to survive the onslaught. Yet, he was grateful for his father's and his sister's support. His father was his financial and emotional pillar, while his sister was a ray of sunshine that always lifted his spirits. Even his mother helped by cooking him light but nutritious meals. Once he earned some pay from his missions, he would ensure that his family received most of it after he got his essential shinobi tools. Have a great day at school, son. His father enveloped him in a huge, which he stiffly returned. Thanks, you too. With that, Kinjo jumped to the roof of his family's home and hopped through the rooftops. The 10-kilometer run was a workout for him even after 3 months of training, but his pace was now swifter, and he was amping up his training. His backpack bounced off his back as he leaped from rooftop to rooftop with chakra bursts. 35 minutes later, he was panting in front of the entrance of the academy. After taking a swig of water from his water bottle, he trudged inside and entered his classroom. Classroom number 202 looked the same as all the other classrooms, with numerous desks, benches, and a chalkboard. The classroom was empty when he walked in, the clock on the wall notifying him that there was still half an hour until classes began. He sat by the window in the middle row and pulled out his books to read. Regarding academics and intelligence, he was ahead of most of the kids in his class. Math, literature, and science were easy for him since he had over 16 years of schooling. Even so, there were a few subjects that he needed to study, such as cryptography, fuinjutsu, and battle tactics. Luckily, most of the students were also unfamiliar with the latter topics, hence he could easily keep up with the others. He was an adult in a child's body, with plenty of knowledge and memories. His chakra also sharpened his focus and his ability to study, which made him absorb information faster. Perhaps that was one reason his reserves were large, though he had no way to verify the theory. Thankfully, he could read every form of Japanese writing without difficulty. It was as if his previous knowledge was translated into Japanese, thus allowing him to understand even the most challenging kanji, katakana, and hiragana characters. Just as he finished a chapter about explosive seals and their uses, a chubby boy with dark brown hair and emerald green eyes shuffled into the room. He scanned the room before his eyes landed on the lone boy sitting in the classroom. Kinjo! He shouted as he stumbled across the room with a delighted grin. How you doing? Kinjo smiled at his loud classmate and placed his book down. Hey Shin. You're early again. Akimichi Shinsuke pulled out a bag of mini melon bread and munched. Crumbs landed on his maroon shirt and khaki pants. You're here earlier than me. Besides, I need time to settle into the mood to read my books. Textbooks? Nah, you know what books I'm talking about. With that, Shin collapsed into the seat next to him and pulled out a stack of shinobi adventure novels from his bag. Most of his classmates had ignored Kinjo when he first transferred into their class. It wasn't difficult to see the reason why. Not only was he 3 years younger, but he was also a stranger with no connections to the class. He was also quiet and reserved, uncertain of how to reach out to a group of kids. He didn't really have a vested interest in reaching out to them, either. Izumi and Itachi were exceptions. Both befriended him through mutual interests, and were much more mature than their age suggested. Additionally, childhood friendships, friend groups, and cliques were already entrenched amongst the fourth years. Unsurprisingly, this meant that he was socially isolated from the class, though there wasn't any malice directed at him. Shinsuke was an exception to this norm. He, like Kinjo, was an odd man out, but for entirely different reasons. Instead of studying and socializing, Shin spent most of his time reading adventure novels and eating at the academy. He was generally friendly and had a few friends but preferred the sanctity of his books. The two had sat together on Kinjo's first day at the academy and reached a mutual understanding. They both enjoyed their books and enjoyed good food. That was all that was needed for a friendship to start. By the way, my dad got me some beef jerky. You want some? Shin stopped chewing on his bread and whipped his head towards Kinjo. What type of beef jerky? I dunno. My dad did say it was hard to find. Kinjo handed him the bag with the beef jerky, and Shin ripped it open with widened eyes. No, it can't be. Shin inhaled the rich scent of the jerky and swallowed one whole. It's the Suzuki beef jerky from the land of rivers. Do you know how valuable these are? Not really? Oh man. Your dad must have some deep connections there. There's a waiting list for Suzuki jerky in Konoha. You're joking. Kinjo grabbed a jerky and chewed. The succulent flavor was incomparable to some of the dry jerky he had eaten. It was tough yet broke apart easily in his mouth. You're not joking. I'll pay you for this. How much? 500 ryo. His jaws dropped when he calculated the amount in his head. It was enough to buy a pair of kunai. It's a deal. They shook, and Kinjo watched as Shin devoured half of the bag before storing the rest in his bag. After a few minutes of small talk, they returned to their books. Kinjo enjoyed the comfortable silence between him and Shin as other students rushed into the classroom. He tuned out the chatter of students and focused on reading more about the application of storage seals. Settle down. The class begins now. He looked up to see a familiar silver-haired chunin standing in front of the chalkboard. Taku scowled as he wrote his name on the chalkboard. My name is Taku, and I am your new instructor. Your previous teacher was sent to the front. That is all I can say on that matter. His previous teacher, Masahiro, was a gentle and soft-spoken man who appeared to enjoy teaching his students. Even though he was in the class for 3 days, Kinjo respected the man for being passionate about his work. Unfortunately, he was now stuck with the drill instructor, which, given the situation outside of the village, wasn't the worst thing that could happen, though it would probably mean much more yelling. Open up your cryptology textbook to page 18. We will have a quiz on the first 2 chapters in a week, so make sure you are paying attention in class. Several groans echoed through the classroom as the sound of pages turning and papers shuffling was heard. Kinjo obliged his new instructor's directions and turned his attention to the chalkboard, where Taku drew some rudimentary code wheel. Meanwhile, Shin giggled as he flipped through his novel and munched on melon bread. Kinjo made a mental note to jot down some notes for his friend. After school was a continuation of his classes, to some degree. I don't get it. It's not that hard, Izumi. Just carry the 2 and add them together. Simple, right? Why do I need to learn math as a shinobi? I'm not going to multiply someone to death. You definitely can. Kinjo mused. What? Never mind. Izumi and Kinjo were sitting in her room at the apartment. Her room was small and was stuffed with various shinobi tools, books, and scrolls. The walls were painted a light green, and a single window sat above her desk. The only clue suggesting a girl lived in this room was 2 giant cat plushies sitting on her bed, next to a poster with all the Hokage posing. If I could beat up this math problem, I would win, Izumi grumbled as she scribbled numbers into her notebook. Kinjo laughed as he kept one eye on her paper and the other on his forehead, where a leaf was rotating clockwise. That would defeat the whole purpose. We're studying stuff like math and science to train our brain and our spiritual energy. What's spiritual energy? Chakra has 2 parts, physical energy and spiritual energy. Physical energy involves exercising and training, increasing endurance. You're good at that. Spiritual energy involves studying and meditating, making you smarter and your chakra stronger. So I need to be smart to be a good shinobi, I guess? Kinjo answered as he thought of a certain blonde obsessed with ramen. Okay. Izumi looked down at her notebook with a frown. I guess I'll use my brain for this. Studying hard would not only help Izumi get into the advanced classes but also help her overall growth. She didn't have much chakra to begin with, as she struggled to use anything beyond the 3 basic jutsu and couldn't use her Sharingan. Since she was constantly training physically, it was time for her to train her mental state, which meant doing multiplication and division tables. No. That was a good try, but you needed to carry a 6 over here instead of a 5. Try again, Izumi pouted. I wish I was as smart as you. That way, I wouldn't need to study so hard, and I wish I was good at taijutsu like you. It's why we're helping each other out, right? We're all good at something. I guess Izumi trailed off as she heard a knock on her door. Mom, sweetie, there's someone here looking for you and Kinjo. I think his name is Itachi? Kinjo stopped spinning the leaf on his forehead and looked up while Izumi turned a bright shade of crimson. He grinned as she marched to her bedroom door and ripped it open. Standing in front of her door was Itachi, who had taken a step away from the door. Her mother was nowhere to be found. Do you need something? She asked calmly. Kinjo noticed her fingernails digging into her palm. Itachi's face was unreadable, but he moved when he caught a glimpse of Kinjo. He held up a book bag and allowed himself into the room. I was planning on studying a few things with Kinjo. Izumi shuffled to her desk and collapsed into her chair, staring at Itachi the entire time. Itachi gave her a look but turned his attention to Kinjo and sat on the floor. I thought you might be interested in some of the tactics we're covering since your classes are probably boring you. I'm helping Izumi right now, though, Kinjo stated. He glanced at her, who was busy staring into the depths of her textbook instead of gawking. She seems to be studying well by herself. Oh yeah, she's definitely intelligent. But I'm just making sure she's not making careless mistakes. Kinjo replied, shooting a knowing grin toward Izumi. Then it shouldn't be a problem. Come take a look. Sure. Kinjo glanced through the textbook Itachi placed in front of him and frowned. I'm learning formations right now. This is definitely more advanced. The 6th years are studying more practical applications in hypothetical situations, which have been enlightening so far. For example, this scenario here on page 92. We just started our classes at the academy, and you're already on page 92? It isn't too difficult. After some time, I began to recognize a pattern to all the tactics and formations. You should really inform the academy about that. Our tactics and formations can have recognizable patterns since the other villages will catch on. Itachi frowned. That's certainly possible. I'll bring it up with my instructor tomorrow. However, I want to see how you answer this scenario. Kinjo read the scenario while rubbing his chin. You are being pursued by 9 enemy shinobi. You are leading a squad of 6 Konoha shinobi, including yourself. Your team has recovered valuable intelligence needed for the war effort. 2 of your squad mates are heavily injured, though stable enough to be moved. The enemy shinobi are faster than your team due to your injured, and they will catch up to you in minutes. Your team is 20 kilometers from the border to the land of fire. What is your decision? Interesting scenario, don't you think? Itachi probed. It definitely is. There was no doubt in Kinjo's mind that this was some sort of test. Itachi wanted to see if he was the person he claimed to be. While Itachi had been relaxed around him, he was trying to pry a bit into his personality and morals. He already knew his answer. The scenario is missing a few pieces of information. What is the average rank of the enemy shinobi? What about my team? What skills does my team have that I can utilize to fight a delaying action? Who are we being chased by? I could come up with a more detailed answer if I had more information. With the information at hand, I would likely try to hold them off alone as long as I can to allow the others to flee. Why? If I'm at a rank high enough to lead 2 teams, then I should have the necessary skills. I can make traps, bring summons, fire off some ninjutsu, or use clones. Something to buy valuable time and allow the team to escape. Even if only a few take the bait, that's a few shinobi off my team's back. If I know that the shinobi team is stronger than us, maybe someone else can assist me. But as the team leader, you must lead and show by example. And what example would I be if I leave my fellow comrades to die while I flee? Itachi remained silent for a minute before nodding his head. I agree. Some things are more important than your life. The irony of that statement was not lost on Kinjo, who contained a snort that threatened to spill out. Anything else? I wrote down a few notes that you may find helpful when you take these classes. I'm sure you are also trying to graduate as quickly as possible. Somewhat. I want to be better prepared before I graduate. If I want to graduate earlier, I can and I will. No, skipping 3 years was already enough. If Kinjo felt he was ready to graduate earlier, he would. Until then, he was going to work on his fundamentals. I'll take my leave then. My brother is waiting for me at home. He just learned how to run, and it's been an exciting experience. Itachi rose to his feet and walked toward the door. Hold on for a moment, Kinjo yelled as he rushed to Izumi. While Itachi was waiting for him, he quickly turned to her and whispered into her ear. This is your chance. My chance at what? You know, your crush on Itachi? I do not have a crush on Itachi. She sputtered loudly. To his credit, Itachi looked away and pretended he didn't hear anything. Kinjo took the opportunity to elbow her shoulders and point to Itachi. Itachi likes strong people. He also hasn't awakened his Sharingan yet. So if you mention that you have the Sharingan, it'll catch his interest. How do you know that? Call it my intuitions. Your what? Forget it. Just tell him. This is your chance. He's in your room. Kinjo nudged her forward as she dragged her feet. Izumi whispered something to Itachi, which instantly caught his interest, and the two began chatting quietly near her bed. He wouldn't deny it. He shipped them hard. And he was going to ensure that Itachi never killed her. After chatting for a few minutes, Itachi gave Izumi a reassuring smile. In turn, she fidgeted her fingers and glared at Kinjo. He just whistled and looked away. Itachi was about to walk out the door when he jerked back towards them. I nearly forgot, but thankfully, I'm still here. I think it's important for you two to know this, just in case. Itachi grimaced as he observed the two in front of him. This will be officially announced in a few days since Hokage-sama is doing some damage control to soften the impact of the news. What is it? Izumi stammered. Orochimaru has defected from Konoha. He is now a missing nin. Kinjo blinked. Taku's voice boomed through the outskirts of Training Ground 10 as the two classes of 4th years awaited eagerly. Remember, you have 2 hours to acquire your opponent's scroll. Breaking any of the rules will mean immediate removal and a failing grade on this portion of your exams. You have 10 minutes to prepare, starting now. Kinjo ran into the training ground before his teammates, thundering to his team's giant scroll and supplies. He reached the area first and rifled through the bags. 100 rubber kunai, 100 rubber shuriken, several spools of ninja wire, half a dozen shovels, and 5 sealing scrolls. So, how do we divide this up? Kinjo muttered as he ran his fingers through the tools. I'll divide it up. You stand there and watch. An older, blue-haired boy named Yuji shouted as he arrived at the scene and waved Kinjo away. Some kids looked at him sympathetically, but most of them shuffled away from him as he stared at them. His silent demeanor made him seem more pitiful, as evident by his classmates' sympathetic whispers. They're fighting again. He is the youngest one in our class, though. He shouldn't be that mean to him. Kinjo shrugged and backed away towards the woods as his teammates argued over their roles and equipment. Hi's pockets had sizable bulges due to 20 kunai and shurikens, along with a spool of ninja wire and a sealing scroll. He walked up a nearby tree with ease and looked around the arena from the topmost branch. Training Ground 10 was the ideal training ground for training leaf shinobi. The diameter of the area was approximately 10 kilometers, with nothing but trees in sight. Most of them were of equal height, except for a few tall trees that stood out like landmarks on the horizon. The sun was high in the sky, providing plenty of shade for the ground below. From what Kinjo could discern, there weren't any clearings or bodies of water in the vicinity. They would have to fight carefully and stealthily to win. A voice called out to him from below. "Hey, Kinjo! What are you doing up there?" "Just checking the surroundings," Kinjo yelled back as he flipped off the branch and landed on the ground. "Are there any clan kids in the other class?" Shin scratched his nose as he munched on his melon bread. "Huh? Oh, clan kids? There's that super annoying Nara girl. I don't know anybody else that's from a clan. A Nara clan member that's going to be troubling. Shin, how about we set off on our own? I was going to sit and read until the end." Shin sat in front of a nearby tree and pulled out a novel. "My brother said that you can get a passing grade by showing off a bit toward the end, so that's what I'm going to do." Kinjo hopped onto the tree trunk and stood above him. "Where's the fun in that? Besides, don't you want to win?" "Not really. Come on, it'll be fun. I need someone to watch my back too." "Nope," Shin answered, swallowing an entire melon bread whole. "I'll get you a whole bag of the Suzuki jerky just for you." He rose to his feet and stuffed the bag of bread in his pocket. "You should have said that in the first place. The bribe was my last resort," Kinjo said with a smirk. "What did you get?" Shin pulled out the supplies he received from Yuji, 3 kunai and a shuriken. "He told me that I sucked and I should just defend our scroll." "Well, this will be a good way to prove him wrong. We'll get creative and beat the other team on our own. Let's go." Looking back, Kinjo saw his teammates digging holes and setting traps with the shovels and ninja wire. Some students were missing, undoubtedly moving ahead to blitz into enemy territory and steal the scroll. They jumped through the forest using the tree branches and found an endless painted line separating the two sides. Kinjo dragged Shin into a sizable bush and whispered, "Make a clone and have it sit on the tree branch. We don't want to get knocked out the moment it starts." Bunshin no Jutsu. The copies of Shin and Kinjo hopped onto a nearby tree while the users distanced themselves from the line. From what they could see, none of their classmates or opponents were in the area. "We'll wait a few minutes for our teammates to rush in and distract them. While they're distracted, we'll pick off anybody that strays to our side and move up." Kinjo pointed towards the west, where towering walls surrounded the training ground. "From there, we'll stick to the outer edges of the walls and make a beeline straight for their scroll." "How are we going to get their scroll?" "I have a plan for that, I think. I should have stayed behind and read my book." Kinjo patted Shin's back. "Too late for that." A loud whistle pierced through the forest, and Taku's voice rumbled once more. "Begin!" 3 figures from their side crossed the line in a blur. One of them turned around and stuck his tongue out at the clones, exposing Yuji's face to the hidden pair. "Guess he wants to take all the credit himself," Kinjo remarked as the trio moved deeper into enemy territory. "You're trying to do the same thing, because I knew the other kids were going to do something like that. Watch, a few people in their class are going to try the same thing." They only had to wait a few minutes before 8 students materialized on the tree branches and attacked the clones. The group looked around when Kinjo and Shin disappeared while one of the girls shouted orders to the others. "They're probably around here somewhere. Spread out. We can't risk them attacking us from behind." "That's the Nara," Shin mentioned as the leader of the group. A raven-haired girl with intense brown eyes passed their hiding spot. "What do you think happened to Yuji and the others?" "They probably got pummeled to the ground. If this group met theirs, then they were outnumbered 3-1. We should try to escape then, right?" "Nah, they've split up, and I have an idea. Here's what we're going to do." Nara Chiaki's eyes darted around as she looked for her target. Her 3 squad mates were behind her, supporting her actions and watching her flank. She gritted her teeth as she passed a familiar tree with her opponents nowhere in sight. When they crossed the line, she saw him. The moment she saw who was in the tree, her vision tunneled onto him. Kinjo. She had seen him several times during the year. He was usually with Shinsuke in class and an Uchiha girl during lunch. A quiet, isolated kid from a civilian family with no previous shinobi training. Yet, in months he had uprooted her from the top of the 4th years and established his position as the top dog. When he first joined her grade, Chiaki heard rumors of how he was smart but bad to average at everything else. She had worried when she heard how Kinjo joined their grade while being 3 years younger, but it seemed as though she was panicking over nothing. After all, she was the best. Maybe not the best in taijutsu, but the best in everything else. Then Kinjo improved rapidly. Throughout the school year, he became stronger, faster, and smarter. By New Year's Day, he had left her in the dust and was climbing even higher. No matter what she did, she couldn't catch up to him. Chiaki couldn't accept it. Compared to the other members of the Nara clan, she lacked intelligence. Her grades for classes involving textbooks were mediocre, which led her to redouble her efforts in training. After 3 years, it paid off, and she earned the top spot in her class. Nara only learned the basic shadow possession jutsu unless they showed exemplary skill and rank. It was a heavily meritocratic clan, which only passed down its most potent techniques to qualified individuals. And since she was from an orphan of a minor family within the clan, she would need to prove her worth to qualify. She needed to be the best, to prove that she was as competent and determined as her parents were. Especially after what they had sacrificed. "We should just go," one of the boys with her suggested. "There's only 2 of them." She stopped on a tree branch and answered. "Go find the others and get the scroll with them. I'll be fine with Sato and Yuko." After he left, Chiaki glanced around to look for a red figure in the forest. She leaped back as a kunai sailed by her and bounced off the trunk. In one step, she and her teammates were hiding behind trees, peeking from cover. Her fists tightened as she strangled the kunai. She loosened a scroll from her belt and whipped it out, sticking it onto the tree in front of her. Chiaki motioned with her hand, scrambling to a new set of trees as she jerked her vision through every tree nearby. When she clasped her hands together, the sealing scroll activated. The scroll released a rabbit that scurried away, shaking a nearby bush and making noise. A kunai hit the rabbit dead on. She smirked and turned as it fell onto the ground. There! Chiaki flicked 2 shurikens and pushed her teammates to move forward. While they rushed head-on, she jumped onto a nearby tree and circled around. Her heart beat faster as she zoomed, an image of her victory playing in her mind. From above, she saw Kinjo and his friend exchange a flurry of kicks and punches with her teammates. Her target grappled Sato and slammed him to the ground, pinning his arm behind him as Shinsuke boxed Yuko away from him. She winced as Sato yelled in pain and cursed Kinjo. Chiaki landed on the ground behind them and placed her right hand above her left. Shadow imitation jutsu. It would only take a second for her to win the fight. The rules stated that she couldn't use any jutsu outside the basic 3, but this was her chance to reclaim her title. If she broke the rules to win, so be it. A cry from Shinsuke made Kinjo whip his head around toward her. He jumped off Sato as Yuko kicked her opponent away and punched at Kinjo's head. Her shadow hurtled toward him, making her sweat. She saw Kinjo's hand signs in slow motion. Tiger, boar, ox. He was trying to escape, but it was too late. Her shadow reached his. Her grin threatened to split her face as Yuko's fist collided with his forehead, knocking him to the ground. Then he disappeared into a cloud of smoke, his body replaced by a log. What? Chiaki dashed away and scanned her surroundings. How? If you practice enough, you can use a jutsu without using all the hand signs. I just needed 3 for Kawarimi. Something pounded the top of her head, sending her sprawling. As her vision wobbled, Chiaki saw a grinning kid with a red hoodie and green shorts standing upside down on a tree branch. You shouldn't cheat. Chiaki tried to retort but lost consciousness as Kinjo jumped down and smacked her temples. Kinjo smirked as a desperate kick tickled his hair. His opponent had a limp arm and lashed out with his other arm. Dodging the feeble punch, Kinjo punched his stomach and tripped his legs when he keeled over. An elbow to the back of the head finished him off as he slumped onto the ground quietly. That wasn't how this was supposed to go, Kinjo. You told me that all I would need to do is sit and look pretty while your grand plan would do the trick. I said it was plan A. Plan B was to beat them up if that failed. Kinjo walked up to a nearby tree and pulled down the sealing scroll hidden underneath one of the branches. When he activated it, a pile of rocks dropped to the ground. He collected the ninja wire on the roots of the tree and kicked a patchy part of the ground that revealed a small hole. So you messed up. He motioned to the unconscious Nara girl and the unfamiliar boy with a graceful bow. The results speak for themselves. Okay, then why did we tie her up? Shin nudged his stubby chin at the only conscious member of the group. She was tied up in ninja wire and looked at the boys with widened eyes. Because my plan to get to their scroll revolves around her. For bait, something like that. Kinjo walked up to the girl and sat down beside her. What's your name? Yuko. Here's the deal, Yuko. If you tell me any useful information about the defenses around the scroll, then I'll let you rest here next to your teammates. You'll still be tied up, but we'll come to get you later, I promise. And if I don't? Her voice quivered. Kinjo tapped the dull kunai on his palm while he inspected her thoroughly, his mouth twisting into a vicious grin. He threw the weapon into a nearby tree, and it embedded itself with a loud crack. After pulling out another one, he pointed it at her face. Then I'll need to send you to sleep. She peeked at her fallen teammates, and widened her eyes as Kinjo threw a kunai right past her ear. I'll tell you everything. There are pit traps all around the scroll and some booby traps on the trees nearby. The password is orange, yellow, and gray. It's what Chiaki made up to stop anyone from trying to get the scroll with the transformation jutsu. That's all I needed to know, thanks. Sorry about It's okay. Thanks for not beating me up. After tying up the other 2, they made their way to the wall to begin their attack. Help! Guys, help! Yuko stumbled toward the students guarding the scroll and rolled around. Her body was bound by wire, turning her into a cocoon that cut deeply into her arms and legs. Her screams rattled the forest, startling her teammates. Yuko! A boy ran up to her and pulled on the wire. Where's Chiaki and the others? A girl ran up to them and blocked him with a scowl. Hold up, Ken. It might not be her. The password is orange, yellow, gray. It's really me. Yuko whispered frantically. Ken pushed the girl away and untangled her, showing her a reassuring smile. It's definitely her. What happened out there? They attacked us out of nowhere and ambushed us. Their entire class is coming. What? 4 shurikens zipped toward the group, striking the 2 near Yuko in the head. They fell onto the ground in a heap while Yuko shook the remaining wire off her. She dived to the ground with a smirk. We're under attack. Their entire class is here. Quick! Fire back! Another flurry of shurikens, and kunai convinced the pair out in the open to plunge for cover. The students behind cover began to toss kunai and shuriken in the general direction of their attackers. Yuko saw a few of the kids move around on the sides, attempting to flank their opponents. Yuko suddenly sprung up from her position and skipped over the pitfall traps. She snatched the scroll while laughing, zooming up a tree before the others realized what was happening. As she scampered away, she flashed the V sign at her teammates. It wasn't until she and Shin were clear from the area that she finally dropped her transformation jutsu. That was your plan? Shin shouted angrily. They looked back and saw the group finally understanding the trickery and chasing after them. A damn good one at that. Kinjo whooped as a kunai whizzed by them. Now run! They raced through the forest and toward the dividing line. Another pair of kunai zipped by them, missing Kinjo by inches. Shin glared at him as he threw a shuriken at one of their pursuers, hitting them dead on. Are you sure it's a good plan? It is. Just then, Shin cried out as a kunai struck his back and slipped from his tree branch. Kinjo grasped Shin's arm and pulled him up, a shuriken slapping his knee. He winced as he hopped away, placing more weight onto his other leg and leaning on Shin. A dozen people were chasing them, both on the branches and on the ground. Maybe it wasn't the best plan, Kinjo admitted. A loud cry made him turn his head. He witnessed one of the pursuers fall into a pitfall trap and disappear from sight. Another tripped on seemingly nothing and tumbled off a tree branch. Yet another was hit by several kunai and shuriken that dropped from a branch nearby. Our teammates, Kinjo commended, saluting a tree nearby as they neared their goal. They trapped the entire place. Must have been to delay the other team if they got the scroll. Was this part of your plan? Nope, but it works. The sound of children cheering and running around permeated the air as Kinjo stepped through the gates of the academy. Dozens of parents milled around in the courtyard, waiting for their children under the warm spring sun. Kinjo's parents were nowhere in sight per usual, but Izumi was by his side as they walked past the swing set and toward their usual place. Time flew by really quickly, Kinjo mentioned as he kicked a rock and sent it rocketing into the sky. He swore he saw a star flash for a moment before it faded away. Can't believe the school year is already finished. Both of them looked the same as they did when they first started at the academy, though they had grown a few inches since. Yeah, but we'll be back at the academy in a month, Izumi cheered. And this time, I'll be among the 4th years. By next year, we'll be classmates again. She had passed her final exams with flying colors and requested an advancement into a higher class. Her request was approved after a special test prepared by the instructors, though she was still a year behind Kinjo. Meanwhile, Kinjo had also aced his exams and finished at the top of his class. He and Shin managed to capture the scroll, leading to his class victory and him earning full marks for his remarkable use of taijutsu, ninjutsu, and creative thinking. On the flip side, Chiaki and Yuji looked battered and sore from their loss. Chiaki looked incredibly pissed at him when he walked out of the training ground while Yuji was grumbling about Kinjo's age, which means we're going to study hard over the break. You can read my notes and my old textbooks so you can ace your classes again next year. Izumi dropped her shoulders and frowned. I don't want to study over the break. Well, if you want to skip another year and graduate with me, then you'll need to. I know, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. It's like eating lettuce. She turned to him abruptly and looked back at the academy. Do you think Itachi is going to graduate with perfect scores? He snorted. Is that even a question? Since today was the last day of the school year, the graduation exams were being held. Itachi had consistently maintained perfect scores throughout the year, so Kinjo wasn't fretting over his friend. Guess not. Do you think we should throw a party for him to celebrate? We tried that on his birthday, and he hated it. Maybe we should just congratulate him normally, Kinjo replied. An impassive Itachi frozen stiff while being showered by confetti was a terrifying memory that stubbornly refused to leave his mind. Maybe I should get Itachi a card. It had been months since she blushed at the mere mention of his name. While she was still jumpy around him, Izumi could converse with Itachi normally. Kinjo made sure he was busy several times a month to let the two have some alone time together. Unfortunately, they only hung out a few times while he was gone since Itachi preferred to train by himself while Izumi spent the time studying. That didn't mean he stopped trying with a few suggestions here and there. Sure. Kinjo shrugged. I got him a book. He needs a better hobby than training and deadpanning. What book? Tale of the Utterly Gusty Shinobi. I think he'll like the main character. Never heard of it. Kinjo sighed. You don't read anything but your textbooks. I do. I read a lot of books, Izumi insisted. Picture books don't count. Hey, they were still bickering as they reached the entrance of the district. Before the pair could step through, they were interrupted by the loud sound of a person clearing their throat. You two are as loud as ever, Itachi grumbled as he hopped off the roof of the gate. Izumi flinched as he landed near her and pointed the finger at him. How did you get here before us? I didn't even need to take the graduation test. They gave me full marks based on my past performance. The official ceremony for the graduates is tomorrow, Itachi answered nonchalantly, his hand brushing over his Konoha headband. You should have asked to graduate this year, Kinjo. You would have passed, Kinjo shrugged. Still need to work on my taijutsu a bit, and work out the kinks with my ninjutsu. You can do that with a jonin instructor. Better safe than sorry. There's a war going on. Hey! I can pass too, Izumi interjected. He's covered 6th year material with me. You haven't, Itachi said. She frowned as she pierced the ground with her foot, creating a sizable hole. Favoritism. More like you were already cramming 3 years of learning. Let's not argue when we're supposed to be celebrating today. Kinjo pulled out his gift and handed it to Itachi. Congrats on graduating, Itachi. He accepted the gift with a ghost of a smile. Thanks. I'll get you something later, Izumi mumbled. I thought I had some time. A picture book? Itachi wondered. I don't read picture books. Recently, Itachi had been joking slightly more and displaying a bit more emotion during their conversations. Whether it was due to him and Itachi hanging out with one another regularly, he didn't know. Kinjo grinned as the two quarreled, though his face went slack when a vaguely familiar man approached them. The man had long, shoulder-length brown hair, and the same eyes as Itachi. He was dressed in a dark blue open-front apron with the Konoha Military Police Force symbol under his flak vest. As he looked at the group, his stern glare was accented by the creases on his face. He had never met the man personally but had heard stories about him from Itachi and Izumi. All he knew was that Uchiha Fugaku was a strict man that took his job as the head of the Uchiha clan and the military police very seriously. Itachi. He gave a curt nod to his son and scanned Kinjo and Izumi. I see you are with your friends, father, Itachi answered with a respectful bow. You already know Izumi. He's Kinjo. Kinjo bowed deeply and hung his head. It's an honor, sir. It is nice meeting you. However, I am here on important business, so forgive me if I ignore you for a few minutes. Fugaku walked past him and patted his son's shoulders. I've been told your results. Well done. If he weren't stone-faced serious, the scene would have been touching. Unfortunately, Kinjo was forced to inscribe another moment of the infamous impassive Uchiha into his mind. Thank you, father. Itachi smiled. Our family will have a personal celebration later tonight, so return home by 6. Of course. Fugaku looked at Izumi, who stiffened under his gaze. I heard from Itachi that you're improving quickly, Izumi. I am Uchiha-sama, she stammered. You have come a long way from failing the training of the elders. Perhaps you will be a genin next year. If you do, we will have 3 bright shinobi leading our clan one day. Fugaku's gaze shifted to Kinjo. Itachi has mentioned how you nearly matched his score on the entrance exam and how you are at the top of your class, despite being from a civilian family. That is quite admirable. Itachi has helped me much, Kinjo replied. Still, it is good to see him making friends with exceptional people his age. Itachi cut into the conversation by waving his hand at Kinjo. He's talented in his own right, father. He can use the fireball already. Truly? Fugaku raised an eyebrow. Interesting. Who taught you the jutsu? A friend, Kinjo answered, avoiding eye contact with Itachi. Surprisingly, Fugaku chuckled. I see. While our clan created the jutsu, more than a few non-Uchiha shinobi can use it in Konoha. After all, we are in the land of fire. Father has a fire affinity like you, Kinjo. He is one of the best fire users in Konoha, Itachi mentioned with pride. That is a flattering statement, but Lord Third is much better than I am with fire. However, perhaps I could give you some advice. Kinjo looked up. You would, sir? I have some time before I need to return to my post, and I have advised young Izumi plenty of times, so yes. The group moved to an empty training ground next to the practice range. Unlike Kinjo's personal training ground, this place contained a few isolated trees and bushes. The grass was patchy and dry, while a large pond sat near the entrance. The charred remains of several trees and bushes produced a pleasant smell of smoked wood chips. Use the great fireball, Fugaku ordered as he crossed his arms in anticipation. He instantly obeyed, running through the hand signs and opening his mouth. Great Fireball Jutsu. His fireball was the size of a giant medicine ball and engulfed the center of the pond in a fiery spiral. Unlike his first attempt, he kept up the jutsu for almost 10 seconds before cutting it off. It was still a work in progress, but he could make and maintain an actual fireball. Izumi clapped while Itachi smiled. Meanwhile, Fugaku let out a low grunt. It's smaller than Itachi's fireball but impressive nonetheless. Do you know any other fire jutsu? Kinjo nodded. A few, then focus on those. The most dangerous fire user is one that has mastered basic fire jutsu and employs them effectively. You are still young, so instead of trying to expand your repertoire, think of ways to enhance the power of your current jutsu. What is Shinobi Rule number 22? A shinobi must always use all resources available to them. All resources? What can strengthen the intensity or power of fire? He recognized what the man was saying. Kinjo had come to the same conclusions while training with his fire jutsu, but his words reaffirmed them. Oil, gunpowder, sawdust, things that you can acquire easily or even produce with chakra. Fugaku clapped his hand together and breathed out several giant fireballs onto the pond. Kinjo shielded his eyes from the bright mini-suns that rose above the water's surface. The sudden rush of heat was as if he had opened a door to a sauna, making him gape at the intensity of the jutsu. He breathed in and smelled the heavy scent of oil, a welcoming yet repugnant smell. When Fugaku was finished, the water in the pond was gone. Only a torrent of steam rising from the barren earth remained. Itachi, if you will, water wave jutsu, Itachi acknowledged, spewing a wave of water and refilling the pond. Fugaku continued his lecture. Fire is considered one of the weaker elements due to its inflexibility. It can rarely be used defensively, hence its reputation as an offense-only nature. Water counters fire, and even skilled fire users will struggle against a competent water user. That is why you must get creative and use whatever you have at your disposal to tip the balance in your favor. There is no such thing as playing fair when you are in a fight for your life. That does not mean you ignore defense. I recommend you begin looking for a way to balance your offense and defense. There are plenty of ways to do this, whether it is through armor, summons, weapons, or even other nature jutsu. Remember my words as you train. Or maybe something that can boost my fire jutsu and provide defense at the same time, Kinjo noted. Oh? I'm sure a talented child like yourself has many excellent ideas. A nagging thought gnawed at his mind. Was Fugaku giving him advice out of the goodness of his heart? Or was there some other ulterior motive related to the potential Uchiha rebellion? After all, if the Uchiha clan rebelled, they would need assistance from other shinobi within Konoha. He kicked those assumptions out of his head. It wouldn't happen, not when he was here. If he had to help Shursui use his Mangekyo Sharingan to brainwash the coup conspirators to prevent the massacre, he would. Thank you, sir. Kinjo bowed his head again. I learned much. Now, before I leave, are you two going to the graduation ceremony tomorrow? Kinjo shook his head while Izumi nodded fervently. I have to help my family at the store tomorrow. Sorry, Itachi, it's fine. You already gave me a gift. That's more than I could ask for, Itachi answered as he waved the book in his hand. As much as Kinjo wanted to attend Itachi's graduation ceremony, he knew Danzo would be there. And it was far too early to make his presence known to the head of Root. After all, surprise was an essential tool for a shinobi. Even if Danzo knew who he was, it was better for Kinjo to not interact with him and give anything away by accident. Calamity was approaching quicker than he liked, but he still had time. In that time, he would prepare for the worst. A thin stream of flame streaked out of Kinjo's mouth while he stood on the pond. His legs wobbled as he closed his eyes and churned his insides. The fire sputtered but continued to burn, a torch of progress that shone on the water's surface. Another tremble, and his eyes flew open. He ran to the safety of the earth, his feet creating larger rings with each stride. Kinjo's feet sank into the water on the last few steps, dampening his sandals and legs as he scrambled onto the shore. He flopped on the ground like a fish and checked his wristwatch. 30 seconds this time, huh? It was a few months after his second year in the academy began, and he was about to turn 8. He had learned plenty in the past year, with Itachi and Izumi assisting his training immensely. He was confident that if he took the Genin test with his current abilities, he would pass it with flying colors. Yet, he still had much to learn. The last place he wanted to learn was on a battlefield. The training was a new method to exercise his chakra control and his fire affinity. While he could stand on the water for hours on end, he wasn't able to use any jutsu while water walking. His concentration and control were limited to one or the other. Hence his attempts to master both at the same time. If I can't do this much, then I can't start on the more advanced nature training, Kinjo grumbled as he jumped onto his feet and embraced the warmth of the sun. Breathing it out of my mouth is hard enough. Summoning flames on other parts of my body, or even turning my chakra into something like oil, sounds tiring. He had a big head start on the other students, thanks to his rigorous training over the past year and a half. Nevertheless, there were limits to his training. Kinjo wasn't a prodigy like Itachi. It took him time to improve every aspect of his shinobi skill set. Chiefly his ninjutsu. After planting his feet and running through 6 hand signs, Kinjo opened his mouth. Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. Half a dozen baseball-sized fireballs shot out of his mouth and whizzed around like fireflies. He furrowed his brows and used his hands to direct them to collide with targets drawn onto the ground. All of them struck their targets, making him grin. He had the first step nailed down. Now, he would need to work on the second step, infusing these fireballs with shurikens or other things to make them deadly. Kinjo pulled out a handful of shurikens from a pouch in his pocket and placed them in front of his mouth. He held them loosely as he blew toward the sky. The shurikens left his hand and attached to the fireballs, spinning into the sky as he used his hands to guide them. The fire tugged and responded to his commands but struggled to carry the shurikens into the air. Instead of soaring to their targets, they bombarded the ground before him, making him leap back with a frown. So there's a limit to what I can control with the fireballs, Kinjo grimaced as he picked up the shurikens. A few were dented from the impact as his hand instinctively reached toward his wallet. That's another week of allowance gone. He placed them back into his pouch and ran his fingers through his hair. I guess it all comes down to practicing my nature transformation. His hands weaved 2 hand signs, ox and tiger. He exhaled noisily and created a clone from the embers spewed out of his mouth. Yojin Bunshin no Jutsu, Ember Clone Jutsu. Yo, his clone waved at him after it finished forming. Occasionally, the clone flickered, revealing the intense flames beneath the surface. A thin layer of chakra held it together, completing the illusion of a solid clone. The usual? Yep. Make sure to keep a close eye on the conversion process itself. The other Kinjo nodded. Here I go again. Kinjo clapped his hands together and focused on his stomach. His chakra swirled, changing its form and burning his insides. He maintained the fire while holding his breath, the flames tickling his throat. He placed a single leaf in his mouth and allowed a small amount of fire to seep in. His face twisted as the taste of ash and burnt leaves invaded his senses. Small grains rattled around his mouth while the bitter powder pulsated heat on his tongue. Looks good. It looks much better than the first time we tried this thing. His clone mused. The clone was entirely made of fire and could sense the conversion of Kinjo's chakra. We have the great fireball jutsu nailed down already. Why are we training like this again? It's good practice. Why have the leaf inside the mouth? You're my clone. You know exactly why. Kinjo belched, spitting out the ashes and rinsing his mouth with water. We can't turn our chakra into ash if we don't get used to this feeling. His clone scowled. Just seeing you react makes me want to throw up. Don't worry, that's for next time. Now what? Kinjo dug out the remaining ash in his mouth with his hands. Now we try again. This time, we turn up the heat and use leaves to create a smokescreen. I hate my job. You're me. You hate it too. Practice is practice, Kinjo shrugged. He shoved several leaves in his mouth and ran through several hand signs. His words were muffled, but he managed to shout out the jutsu. Hiding in ash jutsu. Compared to the other fire jutsu he knew, this one was technically the easiest. The instructions were simple. Create a smokescreen using chakra-infused ash that blocked an opponent's vision and burn them if they touched the ash. The snag was that converting his chakra into ash was a step beyond him. He could mold his chakra into fire relatively quickly now, but changing chakra into ash or any other substance was the next step in his transformation training. He hadn't grasped that even after spending months of effort. His solution was to get creative. Which, in this case, meant using actual ash from his mouth to use the jutsu. A spray of ash shot into the air, blanketing the air in a thick cloud. It followed the wind and whirled around, floating higher and disappearing after a minute. You can't control it cause that ash wasn't infused with chakra. I knew that. Kinjo retorted. You looked a little too happy. Yep, it's our first time trying it, and it worked. If the wind blows in the wrong direction, it's useless. Kinjo tapped his head. Spray it into their face. We put the leaves in our mouth, use the jutsu, and spray the ash into someone's face all in the heat of battle? Can we even do that when we're locked in close combat with someone? His clone probed, grabbing a leaf from Kinjo and spewing out a smokescreen of his own. That's why we're going to practice both our ninjutsu and tessenjutsu. Our new toy might help us with blowing the smokescreen into the direction we want. Kinjo pulled out a flat weapon from his back and grinned. It's time. The weapon of choice for Uchiha Madara. There were dozens of different weapons he could have chosen. Instead of selecting a more popular option, like a sword, he settled on the gunbai as he saw its potential. The fan would give him more defensive coverage and allow him to create space for himself in a close combat fight. If he added a chain, he could use it as a long-range weapon. Additionally, he could use the fan to enhance wind jutsu, which he could use to supplement his fire jutsu. While that was a goal for the far future, he knew it would be a devastating ace if he mastered the fan. The gunbai was the product of saving up money for a year. His allowance and his sale of jerky to Shin allowed him to gather around 5,000 ryo. It was just enough to purchase a gunbai from a weapons store, one that was made out of oak. While the fan was considered a weapon tailored to the Uchiha, it wasn't illegal for him to wield one. However, he had to search several stores to find a gunbai, and he would have to make a personal order for any replacements in the future. It was dark green with crimson-red borders, resembling a burning leaf. The fan came up to his chest, and the handle was wrapped with black tape, making gripping easier. A small magnet was lodged into the middle, which locked the gunbai in place when he stored it on his back. Too bad I can't learn how to use it from the Uchiha. I'll need to find a teacher. Ask the man from the weapons store if he knows anyone. Maybe there's some other non-Uchiha shinobi that uses it. I was just going to say that. While several Uchiha used the gunbai for combat, his request for a teacher was denied by Itachi as most of the forms and styles were considered hidden. The only advice he received was to practice with the gunbai and familiarize himself with the weight and length. After that, he needed to weave it seamlessly into his close combat techniques. Easier said than done. Kinjo held it with 2 hands and swung at his clone, who evaded his attacks. This is surprisingly light though. It's pretty thin and made out of wood. Imagine if we get one that's made of metal. That would be pretty metal. I hate myself, his clone deadpanned. The fan whooshed over the clone's head as it ducked away from a blow to the head, its form flickering from the sudden gust of wind. How does it look? You look clumsy as hell, like a rowdy drunk. So, nowhere near combat ready. 3 out of 10, if I'm being generous. The clone said as he dodged several strikes to avoid getting bashed. Then more reason for me to practice more. Kinjo jabbed the gunbai at the clone's legs, forcing him to jump into the air. He whacked his clone while it was in the air, using the fan as a giant fly swatter. The gunbai went through the clone harmlessly, who looked at him in disapproval. You were thinking of a fly swatter, weren't you? What do you think? That we're lame. The clone muttered before disappearing into a plume of smoke. Maybe I can ask Izumi about any sword styles that might help. That was so cool. You made a copy of yourself and beat it up. He turned around to come face to face with his sister, who was looking up at him with a dazzling smile. His sister had grown 3 inches in a year, and her hair was now beyond her shoulders. She was still smaller than he was, but she was definitely growing bigger. Mika? What are you doing here? Kinjo asked as he attached the gunbai to his back. Daddy told me where you were. I followed his directions, and here I am, Kinjo groaned. I shouldn't have shown him where the training ground was. I want to see more. Mika cheered. You said you can do fireballs. I want to see you make them. They're not for show. One day, I'm going to have to fight to the death and use them to win. But I want to see, she whined. Okay, but if I show you my fireball, then you have to promise you won't be a shinobi and stay at home with mom and dad. No, then no fireball. She sat in a huff and crossed her arms, her eyebrows furrowing as she thought. After a few seconds, she had her answer. Okay, fine. Just show me the fireball. You promised, Kinjo reminded her. Great fireball jutsu. A fireball the size of a water-walking ball manifested on top of the pond, boiling the water below. Mika watched with wide eyes and a gasp as the fire swirled. Kinjo cut off the jutsu shortly after, as he had already used up a considerable amount of chakra from his earlier training. Happy? Now let's go home. Show me how to do it. Mika demanded. It took me 1.5 years to get that right. Besides, you haven't even started training your chakra. Then teach me, Mika. Kinjo's voice deepened as he glared at his sister. You promised. I had my fingers crossed. Instead of answering, he tossed her on his shoulders and walked out of the training ground. She wriggled to break free from his grasp. No. I'm going to be a shinobi. I swear I'm going to turn into mom one day. He grumbled as he carried her away. You too? What, did Sasuke beg to learn the fireball? No, but he has been getting too close to me when I'm training. Kinjo, Itachi, and Izumi sat together in an outdoor yakisoba restaurant outside the Uchiha compound. While the Uchiha district had many good restaurants, Izumi claimed it was too stuffy at times. Hence, they were in the center of the village, away from the eyes of other Uchiha. A few weeks had passed since Kinjo ran into his sister at his training area, and she was still bugging him to no end. He had brought up this new issue with his friends and discovered Itachi displaying a sympathetic frown. Having siblings sounds tiring, Izumi observed as she flicked her chopsticks around. How do you guys laze around at home? The two boys looked at each other and smirked. Itachi spoke up first. We don't. It's either training, studying, or caring for our siblings, Kinjo added. Or, in my case, working at the store during weekends. For me, taking missions. She massaged her temples and placed her head on the table. That sounds terrible. Even I relax for an hour or two before I go to sleep. How are you guys alive? We sleep as well, Itachi said. Even when we're sleeping, we train. I wake up every day with a leaf swirling on my forehead. Weren't you the one that said Itachi needed a better hobby? Izumi mused. I enjoy good food? Kinjo said. Right, good food. Her stomach growled as the scent of noodles and meat became sharper. She blushed while looking at Itachi. That wasn't me. Itachi stared at a passing couple and turned back to her. I'm sorry. Did something happen? You're a natural, Kinjo mused as he leaned back in his chair. So, any interesting missions lately? He frowned. My Jonin leader refuses to accept anything difficult or go anywhere near the front lines. We've been mainly doing C-rank missions that involve delivering messages to outposts. Sounds more exciting than sitting around here. Ooh, you've also been going to those meetings, right? What do they talk about? Izumi inquired. Suddenly, Itachi stood up and glared at Izumi, peeking at Kinjo while moving toward her. After sharing a few hushed words with her, he returned to his seat while she looked frightened. It was an unfamiliar burst of anger that he had never seen in him, as he was usually serious but friendly. Even without knowing what they said, Kinjo understood what they were talking about. The secret Uchiha clan meetings discussing their grievances against the village. Since he became a genin, Itachi was busy on Saturday evenings, excusing himself for personal training. Kinjo never questioned him about this to avoid suspicion, but noticed Itachi's downcast expression whenever he saw him the next day. There were still about 5 years left before the massacre occurred, but it was sobering to see familiar events beginning to happen. Itachi smiled at him, his previous anger absent. Sorry about that. It's clan stuff. Sure. I'm sure the Uchiha clan has a lot of cool and top-secret clan stuff. It's more boring than you may think. Adults talking usually is, Kinjo acknowledged. By the way, Izumi, do you know any sword styles that can be used for a fan? Your gunbai? Izumi pointed to the weapon strapped on his back. I think I might know a few that can help. When their food was served, any mentions of the Uchiha secret meetings faded away. As Kinjo dug into his inviting chicken teriyaki yakisoba, a boy walked up to their table and waved at Itachi. Yo, Itachi. With your girlfriend again? Sure Sway, you're finally back. Itachi smiled at the newcomer as he welcomed him. You've met Izumi before, but meet Kinjo. This is your other friend, huh? Pretty small circle you kept for yourself. Sure Sway chuckled as he shook their hands. Nice to meet ya. I'm Shosui, Itachi's other friend. You only have a few friends yourself, Itachi noted. The older boy was taller than even Itachi, and his raven hair reached the bottom of his neck. His attire was similar to Sasuke's before the Chunin exams, in addition to a tanto on his back. He was already famous, with rumors abounding of his ability to use the body flicker jutsu to its utmost potential. Itachi had mentioned Shosui in passing a few times, but he was always busy with missions due to his talent. Kinjo clasped Shosui's hand as he looked at his grinning face. He looked at Itachi, who looked content at his friend's presence, while Izumi was fidgeting at Shosui's comment with a bright smile. A shudder ran down his spine as Shosui chatted up Itachi again. He looked at his plate with distaste, flicking the noodles as his eyes gravitated toward the other two boys. It was a picture-perfect moment, a group of friends eating in the middle of a busy village, filled with bustling streets, and shining into the evening sky with its electric lights. The first step was coming soon in 2 weeks. He was prepared to use his knowledge to save a life. Just a single life seemed insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but every life was worth saving, or at least trying to save. Especially when I know what to do, Kinjo muttered to himself. With this treaty, the war with Kyumo will now come to an end, and peace will rule the land of fire once more. Cheers broke out at the Hokage's declaration as hundreds of shinobi and thousands of civilians assembled in front of the Hokage Tower celebrated the news. Next to the Hokage was a Kyumo shinobi, whose right eye was covered by his headband. He waved at the crowd with a smirk, eliciting a loud response. No one knew what the terms of the treaty were, but it didn't matter. After years of war, Konoha was now at peace. No more shinobi needed to die in a bloody struggle over foreign territory.